angry guy here. And why are so many women falling into poverty and destitution in 2023? Guys, things are really heating up in 2023. We've seen the cancellation of Roe versus Wade. We've seen mandatory paternity testing now emerging as a possibility. It while it may not happen, while it may not pass, the fact that this is actually because that states are actually beginning to discuss this is quite serious. And we're also seeing major increases in the number of women falling into poverty. And it's a lot of Gen Xer women. It's very intriguing. Gen X women and Gen Z women are increasingly falling into poverty. It's and a lot of Gen Xers have reached out to me and said the Gen Xer women are not doing good. A lot of them are now paying for the mistakes that they made, choosing to prioritize their careers. And it's absolutely true. The numbers are absolutely startling. How many women are now falling into homelessness and destitution? We're going to begin looking into some of this. And it's like when you see the numbers, you have to say what is absolutely going on. One of the things that's interesting is that the world's poor, is predominantly women. But let's look at this, for example. Labor's social housing bill not enough to address older women homeless spike, advocates say. So in this story, advocates say the federal government housing plan is a good first step, but is insufficient to help women age 55 and older who are facing the highest rate of homelessness in a decade. People older than 55 years make up just 16% of Australia's homeless population. This is happening in Australia, for example, which is a predominantly white Western country. And the majority of this cohort are men, and yet there's a massive spike in the number of homeless women. The growth of homeless women, but the growth of women becoming homeless at this age has advocates fearing more is needed to reverse the trend. So they didn't care when men make up the vast majority, and they didn't care the fact that they had so many homeless men. But now all of these women are ending up homeless, and it's a problem. It's unbelievable. When they've had this issue with homeless men for decades, no one cares, and now you have the number of women becoming homeless skyrocketing, and it's still only 16% of the total homeless population, but it's a lot of women, and the numbers are rushing up, and now they're becoming afraid because 16% of the population are now women, and it's rising. They didn't care when it was men, but now because it's women, they're freaking out, right? And they're saying the federal government needs to do more. This is intriguing because why is it that they're now trying to help the women? What about all the homeless men? So they're trying to cite a housing bill to help address older women becoming homeless. What about all the men that are homeless? This is pretty crazy. The majority of people without secure homes in the 2016 census were younger than 35, and nearly half of the increase in the homeless population were between the ages of 25 and 34. The number of older women experiencing homelessness increased by 31% from 2011 up to almost 7,000 in 2016. Losing their jobs in their middle ages possess a major risk to women who typically have smaller savings and superannuation than men, thanks to years out of the workforce raising children. If we could address the problems facing the majority of homeless people, then we could help women over 55, Dr. Allen said. So this is, and I mean, what are you going to do? Create special programs to get women off the street, homeless women off the street, but leave the men there? That is the definition of discrimination. To say that, okay, well, we need to create programs specifically designed to get homeless women off the street, and the men can figure it out for themselves. That is absolute discrimination. Absolute discrimination. And it's there's another article that let me see here. This one's actually pretty interesting. Give me a moment. Let me pull it up. There's another article. I'll share this tab. And this one is women majority of new homeless as ABC census data shows problem getting worse. And the number of people experiencing homelessness in Australia has grown 5.2% in 5 years. But women make up the vast majority of newly homeless, and more than a third of all homeless people aged under 25. So more than a third. So, like I said, the majority of all new homeless people are now members of Generation Z, women who are members of Generation Z and members of Generation X. So Gen X women, Gen Z women, and Gen X women are making up the vast majority of the homeless population of people becoming homeless right now. How strange is that? Why are so many young Gen X women becoming homeless? It's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. You know, Gen Z and Gen X. So basically, the children of Gen X and the children of Gen X and the parents of Gen Z. You know, the women. They're basically all both becoming homeless. All right, and there's just not a lot of good answers for why this is happening right now. There's not a lot of answers for it, and you know, it's actually creating more problems it's creating a lot of problems for women in society. You know, it's creating a lot of problems. And another thing that people don't realize, and we'll jump into this too, is about the poverty of women around the world. Despite all the money that's been spent to help women, if you look at this, if we check out this article here on Oxfam International, why the majority of the world's poor are women. Women make up the majority of the world's poor. All right, and they're blaming gender equality on it. Right, despite some important progress that changes in recent years, and in no country have women achieved economic equality with men, and women are still more likely than men to live in poverty. Guys, even in the United States, women are still more likely than men to live in poverty, even though there are tons of government programs that help women that men don't have access to. It's kind of like socialism. Taking a socialist approach doesn't help people, and people need to learn how to help themselves. And it's pretty intriguing. No matter how much money you try to toss at the problem, it's never going to solve it. And right now they're pushing towards the whole universal basic income, where Andrew Yang says basically give every adult 18 and older a check for $1,000 a month. And guys, anyone who understands how the welfare state works, it traps you in a cycle of poverty, because it's only going to incentivize people not to work, not to try, and it's gonna they're gonna and people are gonna try to live off it. People are absolutely going to try to live off it. It's a horrible idea, and it's really only going to push women further into a cycle of poverty, because it's going to incentivize more women to basically think that they can try to use this to live. All right, what will end up happening with the UBI is that they're going to say that they need a livable universal basic income, and that $1,000 a month is not enough. So what is a livable universal basic income? Realistically, that's more around depending on where you live. All right, a universal basic income of, say, let's $3,000 a month, which would work out to $36,000 a year. Depending on where you live, you could potentially live on that. But keep in mind, even then, you would still just be living just above the poverty line. Okay? There are a lot of men who could live comfortably on $36,000, depending on where they live. If a guy lives in a camper or living in some states, there are some states where, the rents, you can rent an entire house for, like, evidently $500-$600, or rent an apartment for like $500-$600. So there's some guys who live in cheap places. There's some guys who are more, who are more who use their heads more, because like there are a lot of guys who will take that money, they'll buy a camper, a piece of land, and park the damn thing on it, and they're good to go, and they don't have any problems, or they'll build a tiny house and they'll live in it. And like I've said it, these tiny houses are really large coffins. Regardless, men will find a way to survive, but women will take this money and they will burn through it. They'll absolutely burn through it, and it won't. But the idea of $3,000 a month, for every person 18 and older, just to let you know, that would cause extraordinary hyperinflation, because it would further reduce the value of the money in the United States. $1,000 wouldn't cut it. My guess is that they would end up raising it to something like 1,500, maybe 2,000, maybe 2,000. And even at $2,000, I mean, at $1,000, they're going to have to raise taxes significantly. And if they do this, if they try to raise taxes on men, men are already dropping out of the workforce rapidly. If they try to raise taxes on men, men will just become consultant. Men will just literally drop out of the workforce as much as they can, work only when they have to, do remote work. They'll set up LLCs, pay themselves, pay themselves through the LLC, and ultimately end up paying pretty much no taxes whatsoever. Okay, this is really how it is. And the government knows this. So then what the government's going to end up doing is the government's going to go directly after small businesses and try to squeeze small businesses for more taxes, which will be absolutely horrible, because that will result in layoffs, because small businesses can't afford that. Companies that have anywhere from 1 employee to 500 employees, those are small businesses. A company with 500 employees is not a large business. It may sound large to you, it's a small business still. And they're going to have to squeeze it. The small business is the backbone of the economy. Companies like Microsoft, Apple, these companies don't contribute as much as you think to the US economy. The backbone of the US economy is small business. The majority of people in the United States work for small business. And if you start squeezing them, they're going to start firing people. They're going to start replacing their employees with AI, and they're going to start using every method they can possibly use to avoid paying those insane taxes. All right? So the government will have to start printing more money out of thin air. All right? So how do they print it out of thin air? Well, they create more debt. Okay? They create more debt, and then they basically sell these bonds to other countries like China, right? And they're basically junk bonds at this point. And China will buy it. China and other countries will buy up the US's debt, but eventually we have to pay this back. Simpsons actually did something about. Simpsons actually had an episode years ago where they jumped into the future and Lisa Simpson was president, and you know America owed all these countries money, like a ton of money, and every country wanted their cash, and China wanted its cash, and Bart had to basically step in and shame China and say, "Come on, China, you used to be cool." And China was like, "China's still cool. China want payment," because they were like, China wants their money now. And Bart was like, "Come on, you guys used to be cool." And now China's like, "We still cool. China wants their money later." But you literally had to use reverse psychology on them to save America. But it's getting to that point. They're gonna. I mean, we see what we are literally seeing the consequences of what happened with 2020, where the government handed out all of this money to society. One of the major reasons why we're seeing hyperinflation right now is because of all that funny money that the government printed during 2020. You know, that was funny money. A lot of that money was printed using debt. Okay, and it was given free money handed to people who didn't work for it. All right, all those PPP loan schemes. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. A lot of these people are going to jail. A lot of these people will be heading to jail in the coming years. was a ton of fraud, tons of fraud, and the cost of everything in some cases tripled. Okay, tripled, and somehow they think it's a good idea to go and print more money, and that's really where it's headed. And it's only leading to women falling deeper into a cycle of poverty. We already know that come 2029, 45% of women between the ages of 25 and 44 will be single and childless, and the feminists are celebrating it and calling it empowerment. And they're saying that, single men are lonely and single women are empowered. But it's completely, it's not, it's completely the reversal. Women who remain single have higher rates of poverty. It's a fact right now. A lot, couples, married couples the disparity between married couples versus single women is so significant right now. The wages, like the income, like, married couples, a woman who is married access to significantly more income than a woman who is single. And it's insane right now. And yet women are pushing further and further to be single. I mean, well, here's something intriguing that a lot of people are just not talking about also. And it's really considerable, is what's happening with young women and their political views. This actually comes from the Hill, and it's basically young women are trending liberal, young men are not, right? And some of you, Judge Mrs. Hunter, oh gosh. Okay, some of you may have heard about this. Some of you may have heard about this. Young women are more likely to identify as liberal now than at any time in the past 2 decades, a trend that puts them squarely at odds with young men. 44% of young women counted themselves liberal in 2021 compared to 25% of young men. According to a Gallup poll data analyzed by the Survey Center of American Life, the gender gap is the largest record in 24 years of polling. The finding culminates years of rising liberalism among women ages 18 to 29 without any increases among their male peers. Several societal forces have conspired to push young women to the left in recent years, including the M2 movement, former President TRUMP, rising LGBTQ identification, and most recently, the policy on, the right to choose. Okay, slower cooking trends in marital status and educational attainment have also nudged the needle. I think there is a big generational shift that happened with Generation Z. I keep telling you all about Gen Z, Generation Z women who were really coming of age in the last 5 years, said Kelsey Crenshumer, a sociologist at Oregon State University who studied gender politics. The rift between young men and women may widen further. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, a precedent that had protected the right to choose as a constitutional right for nearly half a century. The ruling has energized young women. New survey data released this week shows that 61% of young women consider the right to choose a critical issue, compared with 36% of all Americans. So Gen Z women are more they are more liberal than the general population, and they are. I mean, it's unbelievable, the startling numbers. They're also almost twice as likely to identify as liberals than Gen Z men, which is so that's another insane thing. I would always choose a candidate that is pro choice. I would always choose a candidate that is pro choice. Let me jump over here. And Yeah, make sure to see what you're. I would always choose a candidate that is pro-choice, said Rose Morjoyce, 21, a government a government major at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, who is an avowed liberal. Almost everyone either knows someone who has had who has decided to terminate a pregnancy or has done so themselves. This is something everyone can relate to. Something everyone can relate to. Think about that. The share of men who identify as liberal has held fairly steady for almost 25 years, according to the annual Gallup survey. Roughly one quarter of men ages 18 to 29 turn themselves liberal year after year. So one quarter. Meanwhile, among young women, liberalism has exploded. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, fewer than 30% of women identified as liberal. This is unbelievable. The liberal camp grew through the second term of former President George W. Bush. It expanded further during the tenure of former President Obama. It reached 39% in 2017, the inauguration of President Trump. In the last 2 years, liberalism surged anew. As you can see, there's been a significant, there's actually been a decline there's a decline in the number of young men identifying as liberals, while there's a continuous surge, a massive surge in the number of young women identifying as a as liberals. Okay, between the ages of 18 and 29. Young women today are much more liberal than young men, Daniel Cox wrote in a June newsletter of the Survey Center on American Life, a project of the American Enterprise Institute. His work documents a growing political rift between young women and men. Merjos attends a university long associated with both liberalism and activism. These days, though, she senses more of both among the women. In all of my government classes, there are probably 2 men out of 18 people, she said. ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, that's mostly women. I'm wondering if women are maybe just more inclined to be involved in the community, engaged in the community, and that liberalizes them. Ezra Meyer, 22, a senior at the George Washington University, who leads the college Republicans, he is a conservative on a campus that is overwhelmingly liberal and largely female. In conversations with classmates about politics, he treads lightly. My metrics for deciding if I'm going to be friends with someone really does not come down to what their politics are. He said it comes down to how tolerant they are. Tolerant. Think about this very carefully, because many liberals today are not very tolerant. Meyer doesn't know whether the men at George Washington skew more liberal or conservative than the women, but he has noticed a distinct trend among campus conservatives this fall. We've been doing a lot of recruiting of freshmen on campus, he said, and I would say overwhelmingly it has been male. The conservative females that do get involved, there's fewer of them, but they tend to be way more passionate and way more involved. Several factors have liberalized the nation's 20-something women. The most recent, are perhaps the most powerful, is M2, an uprising against SA, abuse and harassment that caught fire in 2017, empowering millions of women to come forward and seek justice. The inauguration of Trump in the same year pushed more young women into the liberal column. The 45th president battled his own M2 allegations and proved uniquely unpopular among young female voters. Polling in 2016 showed that only 25% of women ages 18 to 34 favored Trump, compared with 40% of same-aged men. This is intriguing. The rise of liberalism among young women has also marched apace with a dramatic increase in young people identifying as a part of the LGBTQ community. A recent survey, 56% of young women reported exclusive attraction to men, while 3/4 of young men said they were solely attracted to women. basically almost half of all women now identify as members of the LGBTQ community, while it's only about 1/4 of young men. Okay, prior research suggests LGBTQ Americans of all ages tend toward liberalism. Several longer term trends have also fed the liberalization of young women as well. One is marriage. The share of women ages 18 to 29 who are married has fallen by half in 20 years, from 31% in 2000 to 15% in 2021. Okay, so rates of marriage, guys, have now declined by more than half, more than half. Okay, among women ages 18 through 29, and those are the years when women have the best options of finding a partner. Those are their best years. All right, and the rates of marriage during those years have fallen by more than half over the last 23 years. And that's basically Gen Z. Gen Z and the youngest. It's almost entirely Gen Z and the very youngest of the millennials, who are basically on the cusp of the generations. All right, let's see here. Come on. The growing ranks of single 20 something women feel a sense of linked fate. Researchers say they gravitate towards female friends in political views, whereas married women more often mirror the politics of their spouses. The correlation between women's sense of linked fate and liberal political preferences suggests that the Democratic Party will benefit from declining marriage rates among young women. Notice let me read this again. All right. It suggests that the Democratic Party will benefit from declining marriage rates among young women. Kretschmer and two co-authors wrote in a 27 paper for the journal Political Research Quarterly. They noted that women make up the majority of the population and vote at high rates. Women also outpace men in educational attainment, a trend that dates to the 1980s. The ratio of women to men in college enrollment now stands at roughly 60 to 40. It continues to grow. This is it's unbelievable. It's and it continues to grow. More young men continue to drop out of college, drop out, and avoid college entirely. All right, Americans who complete college are more liberal than those who do not, and yet women make up the vast majority of those living in poverty. How is this possible when they're more likely to have an education than men? They're more likely to have a college degree than men, and yet they still have significantly higher rates of poverty. Even though men make up the vast majority of all homeless, women are more likely to live in poverty and extreme poverty than men. It's strange. It's absolutely crazy. Putting off college, putting off marriage, going to college, entering the workforce, women are doing that at much higher rates than they used to, said Mark Hetherington, a professor of political science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And all of those things are going to make conservatism and the Republicans significantly less attractive to women. In 1998, the first year of data collected by Gallup in its social series surveys, 28% of young men and 28% of young women identified as liberal. The gender gap in liberalism grew steadily, wider in the 2000s, wider still in the 2010s. The 2021 poll yielded a 19-point spread between young men and young women, the largest on record. I do have some male friends that are moderate, said Lucy Hakolsky, 20, a California liberal, and it annoys the hell out of me. What? she has male friends that are moderate, not even not conservatives, not Republicans, but just moderates. And it annoys her that they are moderates and not full blown liberals. What bothers her about her non liberal friends is not their centrism, but her suspicion that they do not have any clue why they are moderate. They just do not want to pick a side. Therefore, they are apathetic. So this is what's going on. As you can see, there are increasing rates of poverty among Gen Z. Gen Z is making up the vast majority of women falling into poverty, and then members of Gen X. All right, and they're the fastest growing group of people falling into poverty, becoming hopelessness. It's very concerning. It's very concerning what's happening, and I think we need to be very aware of it. And it's like when you look at what the media is saying, what they're promoting, it's nothing good. What they're saying, what's going to happen with Gen Z, where things are headed with Gen Z, it's extremely concerning for all of us. We need to be aware of it because, I mean, look at this column. Gen Z has good reason to be angry. Will they burn it all down? They're asking if Gen Z is going to turn to violence and launch an uprising if they don't get what they want. Gen Z seems like a paradox, far more open to diverse viewpoints and compromise than older Americans, but also in some ways more dogmatic. Will young people extinguish the flames of political polarization or fandom? As their values clash with those of the older generations hoarding power, the fires of extremism crackle louder and expand. Guys, just from the Los Angeles Times, this was written on April 3rd, 2023. Extremism. It's impossible to predict what 69 million Gen Zers will do, but it doesn't take a crystal ball to see that as the arsonist GOP elders double down, young people will be more inclined to burn things too. This is really concerning. Still, there's hope. Gen Zers can negotiate differences better than perhaps any prior generation. Some call them plurals because of their pluralist nature. They're the most racially and ethnically diverse voters. They're more likely to identify as LGBTQ, 20% of them, compared with 11% of millennials and only 3% among older people. They are adverse to binaries, be it man versus woman or citizen versus illegal, and a quarter are Latinx. They're less likely to be immigrants than millennials, but more likely to be children of immigrants, cross-border in culture and identity. Their digital natives born between 1997 and 2012, when surfing the web was already mainstream. They prefer TikTok to TV. Liberal versus conservative cable news pundits are a bore next to social media's multiverse of raw commentary. Social media's negative impact has been greater on this group than any other. Depression, anxiety, and feelings of loneliness made worse by the events of 2012 are big challenges, yet many Gen Zers are demonstrating a remarkable resilience, channeling their sense of unease into advocacy for the most vulnerable. They share millennials' progressive ideas and on social issues, but are more likely to support radical policies. Radical, guys, such as reparations for descendants of enslaved people. They're more likely to believe the government should do more to help people. They believe in advocating for the other, except when the other is a bully. You either have a sensitivity to people or you don't. Mariah Allen, an 18-year-old Black student at Loyola Marymount University, told me ahead of her class on Bad Bunny's activism. If you don't, you're kind of being excluded. Like other Gen Zers, Allen grew up on stories about teenagers rebelling against oppressive governments, from Hunger Games to the Divergent series. Perhaps that's why they're more politically engaged than millennials at their age. While millennials came of age on Harry Potter's lessons of a community's importance, Gen Zers immersed themselves in a world of uprisings. We've been reading political commentary since like middle school, she said. In last year's midterm elections, Gen Zers helped Democrats win in nearly every battleground statewide race and grew the Democratic majority in the U.S. Senate. Oh boy. They were key to President Biden's 2020 victory, despite their qualms about him, even though they're more likely than older generations to be disillusioned with both political parties they vote. If we don't vote, nothing's going to change, Ethan E. Carter, an 18-year-old Latino classmate of Allen's, told me. Incremental change over radical change must be prioritized because it's better than no change. They're pragmatic progressives who see too much at stake for an all or nothing approach. They won't compromise their values, but they're not afraid to compromise on the perfect solution in order to make progress. John Della Volpe, polling director at the Harvard Kennedy School of Politics, told me, yet they've been vilified as anti-American. They're less likely than older people to say that the U.S. is better than all other countries, but the unpatriotic label is unfair given their civic engagement. They care about the country. They value the diverse reality of who Americans are. They're not interested in preserving an America that is monolithic in culture or politics. The election of Donald Trump was a turning point for these young adults, akin to the 9/11 events. For millennials, Gen Zers realized as kids that American exceptionalism was a lie, as immigration enforcement deported their parents, and police took action at racial justice protests during 2020. Many had a sense of deja vu for the dystopian teen dramas they once read. They think this is a TV show. Guys, Gen Z thinks this is a movie. They were prepared. They turned out to vote and deployed their social media accounts as political weapons. They used TikTok to sync a Trump rally at Olivia Juliana, a 19-year-old Texas trolled Rep. Matt Gaetz and used his name to raise $2 million for pro-choice funds. Some experts warn of a revolution brewing within Gen Z, but they aren't destroyers. They're coalition builders, bro. Gen Z come in cycles, an ideological generation like the boomers, guys, a reactive one like Gen Xers who reject fanaticism, a civic-minded one like millennials who want to help the community, followed by an adaptive one that finishes what the civic one started. That's what plurals are. Morley Wingrad, a longtime expert on young voters and generational change, told me. They're kind of like millennials on steroids. That's a terrible thing. They've not only learned to negotiate, live, and succeed in a pluralistic, that's a new word for me, majoritarian world, but did they just make that up? But they're not tolerant of people who want to go back to the days of dominance by one group. In Los Angeles, a younger city council is already demonstrating some of these qualities: pragmatism and less interest in labels and division. They're focusing on renters and public transportation in the council District 6 special election April 4th. All 7 candidates are younger than 40 and reject the zero-sum politics of former councilwoman Nuri Martinez, who resigned after making racist comments. I'm not a mean girl candidate. Marissa Alcaraz, 35, told me she's inspired by Selena Gomez's Kill 'Em With Kindness, a worthy theme for Gen Z. They are not kind people. Of course, not everyone agrees about this generation spirit of inclusiveness. In her forthcoming book, Generations, Jean Twenge, a psychology professor at San Diego State University, argues that Gen Z is becoming more extreme and intolerant. Gen Z has gone the way of older generations, increasingly moving to the poles of political beliefs, but they are doing so sooner in life, she writes. She cites a survey by Monitoring the Future showing a rise in the percentage of 12th graders who identify at the extremes of political ideology. The share of those who identify as very conservative doubled from 4% nearly 4 decades ago to 8% today. Those who identify as very liberal or radical, guys, this is where it gets very concerning, or radical, rose from 9% to 16%. And there is a cause for worry, as seen on some college campuses, with students shouting down political opponents and controversial speakers, a tactic that tends to strengthen the other side's extremism. But the youngest voters' openness to compromise at the ballot box should temper such concerns. Generations move like murmurations, with everything individual shaping the trajectory of the mass, swaying their closest neighbors. Every Gen Zer has the power to change the course of their peers. Every conversation counts. Bianca Valentin, a 21-year-old student at Loyola Marymount University, recalls that in her first year in high school, her class was a microcosm of polarization. Some students were devastated by Trump's election, others were dismissive of that reaction. It led to a lot of fighting. The administration sent concerned letters to parents. As I got older, the same girls who were telling me not to cry that Trump was elected then became very liberal. Wow. Valentine recalls she attributes the change to conversations students had in person and on social media. So social media is really, it's really taking control of the minds of Gen Z. The teens shared videos and other content about how policies were affecting them and build political empathy. We all got to the root of like, okay, we're all human beings, she said. Getting past polarization affects your electoral choice. Many Republicans, particularly older ones, see Gen Zers as impinging on their political power. Young people's fluidity with identity may be foreign to them, but they will have to contend with it. Although most white Americans older than 30 voted Republican in the midterm elections, 58% of whites under age 30 voted for Democratic House candidates. 58%. So basically, Gen Z, again, this is Gen Z and the younger millennials, the oldest, Gen Z and the youngest of the millennials. Oh boy. At the same time, younger Republicans are becoming more socially liberal than their parents. A full 54% of those under age 45 believe America's openness to immigrants is essential, while only a third of those older than 45 think so, according to an analysis of October 22 Pew Research data by Michael Hayes, who co-authored 3 books with Winograd. Gen Z Republicans are more likely than their older counterparts acknowledge that Black people are treated less fairly than whites today. 43% say this, compared to 30% of Republican millennials and 20% of Republican Gen Xers. By contrast, among Democrats of all ages, views on social issues are aligning. It's really the Republicans who are more divided at this point, Hayes told me. There is a widening generational rupture on the right as youths of all backgrounds learn to coexist and care about one another. Younger people are more willing to work together across a variety of lines, age groups, age, generation, party, race, he said. Okay. Gen Zers and millennials will represent nearly 40% votes in the 2024 election. Millennials are the first generation that hasn't become more conservative with age, and Gen Zers are following their progressive footsteps. The GOP's future, whether it accepts the reality or not, will depend on winning over this generation. As long as Gen Zers fight apathy and cynicism about politics, they may come to wield far more power than they think they have. I mean, guys, it's rough. It is absolutely rough. And when you look at what's happening, it's not benefiting them. They're just basically demanding socialism, and it's not helping them at all. And their response to this is like, okay, well, we're gonna become anarchist. And that's a terrible way of viewing things. That's a terrible way of looking at things. Let's read some of the chats. Stan said, "What's up, angry?" What's up? It says, "Angry, what's up? We here? What's good?" Dr. MGTOW says, Sharkman, what's going on? He said, Dr. MGTOW says, I must go to bed in 2 hours. I have work at 6 p.m. Oh, well, I hear you, bro. Emoji says, the GOAT Red Pill grandfather. Appreciate that. T1 TCP says, don't forget the permanent alimony ban. That's another thing that's happening in Florida. They just banned lifetime alimony, and that could begin expanding to other states. Michael Griffin pointed out that men are survivors, and that's one of the reasons why men survive and thrive later on in life. He said, I am progressive, said men aren't considered human anymore in this gynocentric hellhole. Shout out to Calvin. I'm glad to see Calvin. Says, good morning to the chat and salute, peace and blessings to you, angry guy, and salute. Guys, we did that 10 and a half hour stream yesterday. It was absolutely unbelievable. Calvin was there for the entire stream. I was so happy that someone stuck around. It's so funny because I only end up, I have a sleep tracker on my phone. I do track the amount of sleep that I get, and it's what's really interesting about it is that in the end, the amount of sleep the amount of sleep that I actually got was actually pretty small. After I got off the stream, because I was really tired, I slept for 5 hours and 34 minutes total. Yeah, that according to my sleep tracker. So, and that's after a 10 and a half hour stream, and then I was basically up for the rest of, I didn't go back to sleep. So that's pretty crazy, and I'm not insanely tired right now, but Michael says women have hit the wall, spent all of their money on cats and dogs. All right. Calvin says that he doesn't really care about if a woman becomes homeless. And, he says, tell me, why should a veteran be homeless and not women? This is one of the reasons why he's leaving the States. Taryn Richburg says, it'll be more women than that if they ain't having kids to live off men. Like I said, if we breed them out, then they will be exposed as to how useless they've become. Dr. MGTOW says, I feel no pity for homeless women. They have it too easy. I Am Progressive says, why should I care about them? They don't give two craps about us men. Calvin Rogers says, the 1% will want this cause women will spend their money on their hair and nails. Yeah, pretty much. If they get a universal basic income, they're just going to toss it away. Jason said that in New York, that's about $5,000 a month. It's crazy. Calvin says AI is the top 10% to starve. AI is the top 10% to starve people. Okay. He says no single men are leaving for the southern counties and the east finding wives and raising children. Shout out to Eric. Eric's in the chat. He says women destroy civilizations. Michael Griffin says that tired of the BS, became a password bro. Hoyt says only Black history ignored blacks. Okay. He said that 38% of Black pregnancies are ended. Over 50% in New York City. Black women are by far most overweight, least married, most in debt. 78% fatherless. Black women. Those are really, really alarming statistics. Taryn Richburg says, passport bros on deck. Dr. MGTOW says, I hate Gen Z. I hate Gen Zidiot females. All degenerate woke. Let me see here. Michael Griffin says, yes, I noticed the I don't need no man movement has forced young men to look beyond our borders. That's sad. That's sad. It will change eventually. Okay, let's keep going. Calvin says, Black women have been saying that they don't need a man Now the men are leaving black women. What want to shame black men for exercise extra for using their options or exercising their options. Let's have a look at this. Emoji Mister says, do they really need $1 million studies to understand this? Democrats give free stuff to women, and women hate responsibility and accountability. Democrats say blame everything. Okay. Dr. MGTOW says that Gen Z idiots are lazy as hell. That's a new term, Gen Z idiots. I love that. Gen Z idiots. Oh, wow. Gen Z idiots. Oh, goodness. Because men are waking up to some women and their delusional minds. The Jesus nerd said black women are the new leftover women. White men in America will suffer. White men in America will suffer same fate. White women. He's meant to say white women in America will suffer the same fate. Okay, I mean, it is what it is, and women basically made this choice. And the craziest thing is, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I said that the label feminism would die, but the legacy of feminism would live on. And Gen Z is such a weird generation that Gen Z could be the generation that says that they no longer want to use the label feminism, even though they will continue to expunge feminist views. It's a very intriguing thing. So the label they may actually shift away from using the label feminist. This is how Gen Z, they're a weird group of people. They may actually say, yeah, we don't want to use the label feminist anymore, but they may also but the legacy of feminism will continue to live on. And I said that years ago. Let's go ahead and read some more. Neophyte Nomad said, I would and have given a 20 to a man on the street before. I'd give 20 cents to a woman. It's just too easy for them to win in this current society, universe, timeline. What you will. The Jesus nerd says that feminism in all forms is demonic witchcraft. And he says that pro-choice is satanic sacrifice. I mean, it is definitely, it's really hard what we're witnessing in society today. It's absolutely hard what we're witnessing in society today. And you can see that men are increasingly frustrated. Even younger men are in rapid rates, are basically choosing to just walk away entirely from all of it. Younger men are literally done. They're like, a lot of them are just literally done, shocking. And they're basically, pulling out of society, pulling out of, just saying like, yeah, I'm done with this. This just isn't for me. And guys, like I've posted some polls, and it's interesting because when I get response, when I get responses from like regarding Gen Z, it's like the responses are really, really, really tough. A lot of people are not pleased with Gen Z. I'll show you one recent poll that I posted. Some of you saw the poll, but if you if you didn't think about it, if you didn't think about this previously, you know, let's let's look at this right now. See if I put this on the screen for you. This is a poll that I made, and it says I did it about a day ago. One of these must vanish forever. What's your choice? 2.7 thousand people voted. All right, and the options were cars, and there's a picture of a car, airplanes, and there's a picture of an airplane, computers, there's a picture of a computer, phones, there's a picture of a phone, and then of course Gen Z, and there's a picture of a rat. And 3% said they would choose for cars to vanish forever if one thing had to vanish. 7% said they would choose airplanes if one thing had to vanish forever and they had to choose. 11% chose computers if one thing had to vanish forever and they had to choose. Another 11% chose phones if one thing had to vanish and they had to choose. But shockingly, overwhelmingly, 68%, almost 70% of 2.7 thousand respondents chose Gen Z. Gen Z, guys. Okay? So they would actually choose. These numbers are unbelievable. These numbers, I guess, I mean, it's just, there were people that were calling this genocide, that were basically saying that this is genocide. And yeah, by a vast majority, almost 70% of people out of 2.7 thousand votes, that's a lot of votes, would have Gen Z vanish forever before sacrificing phones, computers, airplanes, or cars. 70%. 7-0. Wow. That's just a little bit of highlighting, you know, that's just a little bit of highlighting how people feel about them. The Jesus Nerd says Gen Z are not very bright and they deserve to expire. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger in there, you know, and even from people, members of Gen Z, they're actively complaining about Gen Z. I posted a poll, asking about what the average IQ of Gen Z was, and here's a response by someone. You didn't go low enough. The average IQ is 45, for God's sakes. They can't even handle math. One time I got up in front of a group of Gen Zers and did a long division problem. Half of them immediately started crying. The other half didn't believe my answer was correct and called me a terrible word, called me a racist. Fortunately, I had brought enough red saber for all. That's pepper spray. That is pepper spray. So basically, guys, Gen Z witnessed long division and they thought it was a form of witchcraft. All right? They thought they had just witnessed witchcraft. Let's check out this one right here. In all seriousness, I'd say that Gen Z's average in terms of IQ is probably high 80s and maybe 90. To put that in perspective, the general average of normalized is normalized to 100, and the cutoff for functional literacy is about 85. And Jonathan, this guy believes that Gen Z's average IQ is in the 80s and maybe 90. The average Gen Zer is maybe 90 if you're lucky. Maybe 90. And then Jonathan Hartley says, yet they can't read or write. Hell, they can't even tell the time. They must be about 40. And what's intriguing? Somebody actually said something intriguing in another post that I did not put up, but they pointed out that Gen Z, most of them can't actually read a watch. If you don't have numbers, if you don't have a numbered watch, they can't tell you what time it is. They don't understand the big hand and the little hand, and forget about a sundial. They don't know what the hell that is, and they could never read a sundial. They don't understand the concept of why it's important to, understand how things work, that aren't connected to computers or electricity. Gen Z believes that they don't need to learn how to read maps because they have GPS and the world will just adapt to them. This is the argument that they have. They believe that the world will just adapt to them. Technology will just adapt to them. They do not believe that we can have a world where technology can be shut off at any given moment. I mean, it's like this generation has never experienced a power outage before. I remember, and some of you have experienced this before, power outages. I remember experiencing a power outage once where like the power was out for like over a day. And what do you do? What do you do when the power goes out? It's absolutely insane. There are no lights. There's nothing. And do you guys understand? Thankfully, that was at that time I was living with my mother, and of course, thankfully, she had, she was because of how she was raised. She kept like a container of water in the basement, for example. So she always kept water, to large barrels of water, right? And she did that because people know that there's always going to be time. There will always be a time when you may not have access to water, and the power went out. And I think like the water also may have gone out, and but we were okay because thankfully we had water, and we had candles. She had tons and tons of candles. So even though we didn't have electricity, there were candles, so we had light, right? And we had water, we had light, we had food, and a lot of people don't even have that. Gen Zers, if the power goes out, many Gen Zers don't even have candles. I mean, a couple of scented candles aren't gonna keep you, man. A handful of scented candles are not gonna do it for you. And Gen Z doesn't know how to cook. They think that, food should be given to them. Most Gen Z women don't know how to cook. So, the power goes out again. You can't order Uber Eats. Like, we're going to have power outages again. It's amazing that Gen Z, we haven't had a good power outage on a national scale in a number of years. And they do happen. But Gen Z doesn't remember any of this. And when they happen, sometimes the power is out for a couple of days. And during that time frame, there's no Uber Eats, man. Like, they don't get it. There's no Uber Eats. You're not going to be able to order food from McDonald's and have them deliver it to you. You're going to have to be able to prepare food for yourself. And the scary truth about this is that, I showed you an article where it suggested that Gen Z may just, if they don't have what they need or have what they want, they'll just start looting. They're a generation of anarchists, and they'll basically say that the world has turned against them. The power went out. It's everyone else's fault, and they're going to go and take what they want because the world is evil. Everyone is evil. Every other generation is to blame. They have no resilience, and they are very prone to violence. Gen Z is very, very prone to violence. It's just it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening. And it's only getting worse. There are people who are saying, "Oh, hopefully the other end of the generation will get better. Hopefully things will improve with Gen Z. Because the younger version, the younger ones, and that's crazy. It's only going to get worse. You know, I have a comment from a Gen Zer, and he said that I'm 25 and I remember when no one cared. Even if someone said something that was racist, you just yelled at them to shut it. I remember when being American meant a strong sense of community. God damn, I hate my gen. Yep, yep. I told you guys. I told you guys. And there's the crazy thing. One of the crazier things about Gen Z is they don't really have a lot of shame. Like they're like, we will not be shamed. We will not be shamed. Like, they don't have a lot of shame. They don't have a lot of shame. They think that it's kind of a game, you know? They think it's all kind of a game. Here's another one for you guys. Let me check this out. I think people sometimes say that this generation doesn't want to work because they're short staffed at restaurants almost everywhere and grocery stores. But these people don't want the crappy $15 an hour job. They cannot live off that alone. The cost of living is too high right now. So people are looking to do work elsewhere. A lot of the people I know that are in that generation working right now are working at UPS or some factory where they have to do physical labor all day. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Gen Z If you are 18 years old, man, if you're 18 or 19 or 20, you have no, all you have is a high school diploma, if even that. You have no skills, all right? You have no specialized training. You have no training in anything. You have no specialized skills, all right? And you want to make $25 an hour? That doesn't make any sense. There are a lot of people right now who make $50,000 to $60,000 a year, who have $100,000 in student loan debt. Okay? There are people like stenographers making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, who went to school, had to get a certain, studied, had to do a lot of advanced coursework, had to do a lot of math, had to do a lot of training after they graduated. All right? And you could even argue that some aspects of their job are harder than a typical physician, and they're only making $50,000 to $60,000 a year, and they're not complaining. They're great, And I mean, think about this. And they have to work more than 8 hours a day sometimes, maybe 50, 60 hours a week. But Gen Z doesn't want to work 40 hours, or they don't want to work 40 hours or more than 40 hours, let alone. And they think that they even think $25 is too little. They think that they should be making $100,000 a year or more doing DoorDash. They say that this is the argument. They say that, like, eating at a restaurant is a luxury. Having food delivered to you is a luxury. Hence, if you want your food, you need to tip them well. But here's the argument. Here's a counter argument to that. I'm paying for the service already. It is not a luxury. Okay? These people are so entitled, and they're absolutely insane. Okay? Telling me that it's a luxury to have my food delivered, so I need to tip them well. No, sis. No, bro. It's not a luxury, because I'm paying for a service. Just like I pay my cell phone bill, it's a service. Okay? You can say that having a cell phone is a luxury. You could say eating at a restaurant is a luxury. Okay, check this out, bro. I pay to eat at that restaurant. The food is not free. Okay? You work for the restaurant, you're an employee of the restaurant. Let me make that clear. You're an employee. It is not my direct concern how much money you make. That's between you and your employer. So if I choose not to tip you well, or not to tip you at all, I have not broken any law. And if you come looking for me or saying that I should be banned from the restaurant because I didn't tip you, you're out of your mind. And this whole thing about, for example, you go and you get takeout, and they want you to tip 20%, and they'll turn around and tell you that, oh, it's a luxury to have food prepared for you. And if you don't want to tip us properly, then go cook your own food. I'm paying for this food. This food is not free. Okay? I'm paying for the food. If I needed to pay a separate fee for your service, they would include it in there. For example, there are places where you go, there are restaurants where they charge mandatory gratuity. Okay? They charge mandatory gratuity. So if they wanted me to pay mandatory gratuity, they would put that on there. But they can't. You cannot charge someone 20% of their order to hand them their food. These people are crazy. They think in their minds, because a lot of these guys, a lot of Gen Zers and younger millennials are even quitting their jobs to go do DoorDash for full time, to go work for Uber full time. They're quitting their full time jobs. Those of them that have jobs are deciding that it's not worth it, and they're quitting their full time jobs to go do DoorDash because it's easier. Okay? Because why should they work for $20 an hour when they can torment people into giving them giving them tips? They think they should be making $100 an hour, $100 an hour delivering food, and they're like trying to lecture you about how necessary the work that they're doing is. Are you out of your minds? Do you understand? It's like these kids don't seem to understand that a lot of doctors who are residents don't make $100,000 a year. You have a lot of residents that start at like $70,000, 70 grand, or even less than that. There's a lot of doctors who have residencies, all right, after medical school, and they don't make a lot of money during those years. I don't know what's wrong with this delusional generation. Think about this very carefully. You go to college for 4 years. You go to medical school for another 4 years. Then you do a residency, which is typically at least 4 years, although there are some surgical residencies I've heard that can be almost 10 years. Right? And you don't even crack $100,000. Okay? And you're paying back, and during that time, you're also paying back student loans. So you're basically earning what's equivalent to essentially minimum wage. And then you have these people who think that they are better than doctors. They are better than someone who spent years in school and training. They're better than engineers who had to struggle to get through school. They're better than aviation pilots. They're better than they're better than a nurse. They're better than people who've had to go through various training. Just to be, for example, a nursing assistant. Those programs can go up to 6 months. You have to spend money to go for that certification. You have to get certified. So there's an entire training process. And then there are a lot of these people who don't even make $20 an hour. Or they make around, it's just like in recent years. You go back 10 years ago, there were a lot of nursing assistants making like $13 an hour. All right? Now, some of them making maybe 23. And Gen Z thinks that they're better than these people. To be a security guard, you have to get a license. You have to go and do a training course. Then you take a test. Then you have to go down to a center, and you have to wait and go through an entire process. And if depending on how many people are there, it could be you may even have to go more than one day. And then there's also different things like fire guard and all this other stuff, which is additional training and additional exams. And that's just so that you can make $20 an hour, if even that. There's some people that make more than that, but a lot of security guards don't make a ton of money. And Gen Z thinks they're better than them. Okay? Gen Z thinks they're better than you. They think that their time is worth more than your time. They think that these guys are crazy. These guys are crazy. They don't want to work very hard. And they want exorbitant amounts of money for small amounts of work. It's like literally, who are these people? Who are these people? check this out. I'd say Gen Z is a generation of extremes. Most of them are extremely lazy. Most of them are extremely lazy and just not and just a non-functional human overall. There's a small percentage of Gen Z, which I agree with, that is incredibly hardworking and determined, considerably more than many other generations, to the point that they will probably carry Gen Z on their backs. They're not going to carry Gen Z on their backs. They're going to distance themselves from Gen Z. They're going to distance themselves entirely from Gen Z. That's what's going to happen. Here's another one. Eddie says, I'm beginning to think there's something to Angry's name, always picking on Gen Z, lol. They haven't failed us. Society has failed them. Guys, so a lot of people on my channel are Gen Xers, right? A lot of you guys are Gen Xers that are on my channel. Okay? This is really a Gen X channel, to be honest with you. I've got a lot of Gen Xers and younger boomers on here. Okay? And you know, the Jesus nerd says it very well. Angry Gen Z equals Marxist, socialist, communist. Calvin says Gen Z wants to be the beautiful ones in the mouse utopia. Lol. Wow, for real. And for those of you that don't know who the beautiful ones were, they're a bunch of bastards. All right, they're a bunch of bastards. But let me. Oh my gosh. There's so many great comments. It's like you guys are just like, I want to read your comments. But here's the thing, an interesting thing. For those of you that are, I'll be 40 in like in 2 months. All right, I'll be 40 in 2 months. And those of you that are around my age and those of you that are a bit older than I am, many of you have similar experiences to what I had, where, you know, at 5 and 6, you know, we would come home from school and our parents wouldn't be there. You know, they call Gen X latchkey kids because Gen X grew up without parents being around. You know, we grew up, we grew up with, with no parents and no supervision. By around 8 years, it was the average was 8 years old, where Gen Z was on their own. By 8 years old, you were on your own. You'd come home, there was no mom, there was no dad. All right, there was no meal prepared for you. You had to basically figure it out on your own. Okay, you had to survive on your own. You had to provide for yourself. And guys, this could never happen today. I remember at 5 years old, I accidentally pissed myself, and my father was home on break from work, and he came to the school. Instead of bringing me a change of underwear, I was only five. And he basically told me I have a couple of choices. I could stay there and sit in my piss, or he can take me home and leave me there because he had to go back to work. I was 5 years old. That was in 1987. Was that 87? Was that 87 or that was no. It was 1988. In 1988, all right, at 5, told me, he said, those are your choices, man. All right. This is the kind of shit that they did back then. By the time I was 6 years old, I was already using the stove, cutting things up, preparing food for myself, making scrambled eggs. At 6 years old, I was using the stove. All right, 6. This is the normal experience for many Gen Zers. They're called latchkey kids for a reason, because they were these people were our parents were gone. Our parents were gone. And let me explain this to you. We didn't have cell phones back then. We didn't have, guys, you basically would go out and you weren't sure if you'd hear from your parents. Like, maybe you would be, they'd come home when they came home, and that was it. And, their ability to give you a call, if you're in the house, they couldn't just like always get access to a phone. So you didn't really know what was going on. And many of us would sit alone in the dark, because my parents would flip out if they came home and all the lights were on. So basically, I would have to confine myself to one room and sit there in the room and sit there. And of course, they were cheap. They didn't want us. My father didn't want to pay for cable. And didn't want us watching television because he said television was the devil's thing. So no television most of the time, no cable, no television, and as a kid, just basically sitting home by yourself, doing nothing, doing literally nothing. And again, these parents, they didn't help. These were not people that helped you with your homework. That they would basically mock you for not knowing how to do something. And this is how we grew up. And Gen Z is like, oh, woe is me. It's our parents' fault. It's our parents. They're the reason why we're like this. Okay, maybe they didn't raise us properly, or they chose to give us, they left us to TV and social media and phones. What? So let me get this straight. It's the fault of Gen Z because you grew up in privilege. You were handed $1,000 cell phones and don't value, and to this day don't value it. Gen Zers walk around with, it's very common for Gen Zers to walk around with two phones now. They walk around with an iPhone and they'll walk around with an Android. Their preference is iPhone, but a lot of them have both phones. They'll have an iPhone and an Android, both nice phones, both expensive phones, so they can switch between them. How the heck is this even possible, right? Because back in the late 80s and the 90s, the only people that had phones, listen, this is something intriguing that a lot of young people don't know. A lot of Gen Zers don't know this. If you had a cell phone back in the 90s and late 80s and the 90s and the early 90s, they could call the cops on you because they would say that the only people that could afford these things were drug dealers. So if you were a certain age, if you were a teenager and you had a cell phone, you can get into a lot of trouble. You can get into a lot of trouble if you had a cell phone back then, because they would say that the only person who could afford to have a cell phone back then was a drug dealer. And they weren't too far off, because back in those days, you paid by the minutes. You literally paid by the minutes. And then when texting came along, it was exorbitant amounts of money. Like, literally, it was not uncommon to spend $300, $400, even $500 in a single month on a cell phone for cell phone bills. Yeah, you heard me, guys. You heard me. If you used that cell phone, it was not uncommon for people to that used cell phones to make calls regularly and have long conversations. It was not uncommon to have a $300, $400, or even $500 cell phone bill. My mother, she was one of the first people to have a cell phone back then, and her bills used to be just ridiculous, hundreds of dollars a month. She could easily spend any $3,000 to $5,000 a year in just for that cell phone. That was back in the early 90s. $3,000 to $5,000 now, and adjust that for inflation, and that's ridiculous amounts of money. And Gen Z thinks this is a game. They have cell phones, they have tablets, they have access to the internet, something that was a luxury for millennials. They're like, oh, it's a different generation now. They take everything for granted. Okay? They have the ability to make money using things like ride-sharing apps, like Uber. They can do Uber. They can drive for Uber. All right. They can do DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub. And if you're 18 years old and you have no skills, if you're 18, you have no skills, and you can make $15 to $20 an hour, and a lot of them make more than that. Usually, the average for the average amount, the minimum that these people typically make is around $17 an hour. That's the minimum. Although many of them make up to $35 an hour if they work enough hours, and there's a lot of Uber drivers depending on where they work. Like in New York, they can make $600 a day, and I know because I've spoken to many of them. But Gen Z, they're delusional. They're delusional. Back when I was growing up, and back when we were growing up, if you made 15, even though we have inflation, think about it, guys. $15 an hour or $17 an hour, even now. And you can do that just delivering food. You can hop on an e-bike because a lot of them have e-bikes, or they rent them, and they just pick up meals in the area. So there's like somebody like just down the road, and they just sit outside of a McDonald's, all right, pick up someone's meal, and they just made $10. Oh, picked up something else. So within an hour, they've made anywhere from $17 to $35. All right. Within 3 hours, if they work just 3 hours, they'll often make anywhere from $60 to even $100. All right, you're 18 years old. You're complaining about, you have future, like, oh, this is crap money. The companies are ripping us off. Uber is, bro. This is a side hustle. This is supposed to complement an actual job, a normal job. This is not supposed to be your main job, bro. And a lot of them are quitting. They're quitting their main jobs to go do these jobs full time because they don't want to have to do any real work. And at 18, 19, 20, even 25, they think that they're supposed to be making enough money to purchase a freaking house. They all have aspirations of owning homes, and they want to own and they're not being paid enough because they're being ripped off by greedy corporations like McDonald's. Oh, the CEO of McDonald's made $2 million last year, and they only want to pay us, and they don't even want to pay us $15 an hour. The CEO of the company, bro. This is the person at the top of a multi-billion-dollar company that rakes in like $100 billion a year, and you are quarreling that the CEO makes $2 billion while you're making only 15, and you think that you should be making more money. That's in line with the CEO of the company. Oh, Jesus, 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 Jesus. If for Gen Xers and older millennials, you'll remember that when we were growing up, McDonald's and the Burger King fast food restaurants, you didn't have people who were in their 50s and 60s or even in their late 20s working in these places. Typically, you would go into a McDonald's and you wouldn't find someone in their late 20s, even 25 years old, working at McDonald's. All right. People would call you a loser. Like they're literally movies, guys. There was a big shift. There was a huge shift years ago, like around 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it started to happen, where you started to have, like the younger millennials and now the Gen Zers, they started to do this bull crap where they started to, a lot of them that just were not functional for society, they started popping up as fast food jobs. So you had like 25, like he's 25 years old, like even 22. What are you doing? Like, bro, what are you, like 23? What are you doing here, dude? Like, I understand. Like, are you still in school, man? Like, you're finishing up school. You're making a little extra money while you're finishing up school, or you're training for something. No, this is my full-time job. This is what I do for a living. Bro, this is McDonald's. This is not a job. Yeah, well, it is a job for me. Guys, if you remember, these jobs were typically done by teenagers. Like McDonald's literally had commercials, and it was McDonald's is where you go to get your first job and get some experience. You would go into McDonald's and you would never see someone. You would never see someone that was older. Typically, like, forget about a 50-year-old or a 40-year-old working at McDonald's. Even 25, it was just not typical. These jobs were jobs for teenagers, and then all these people, these older people, they started pushing them out, pushing out the young people, and saying that they should be paid a livable wage to work at McDonald's. All right, you should be paid a livable wage to work at McDonald's. You go to Starbucks now, it's even worse because they're getting at least $15 an hour, and then they're getting tips on top of that. They spin the what do you call the damn thing? They spin the tablet around when you pay, and it says, "Do you want a tip?" And they look at you hard. And these people, they'll get a nasty attitude with you, and they'll say, "Well, I worked really hard on that coffee, and if you have $7 for a cup of coffee, then you have money to tip. If you have $7 for a cup of coffee, then you can tip me a couple of bucks." And then and here's the thing: if it's $7, like if it's for something like that, they'll ask, "Do you want to tip 50% or 100% off the cost of your order?" Are you crazy? I'm supposed to give you this, and they'll literally like ban you. Like, if you don't tip them, they'll come and look for you and tell you you're banned. Like, you're banned from the restaurant. You didn't tip me. You stole from me. You are banned from the restaurant. I have the support of management. Don't show your face here ever again. And they'll basically go and cry and start crying, and the other employees will console them. It's like it was like an essay just occurred, and like they're survivors, and they just showed you, okay, because you're a thief and a crook, and if you come back around, they'll call the police. The Shadow Monk says the most they said I could make as a security guard was $15 an hour. Guys, after I finished school, back during the Great Recession, okay? After I finished school, when I finished school, the Great Recession had hit, and there were no jobs. I worked so damn hard to get a degree, one of the best degrees in the world, and I could not get a job anywhere. So, out of desperation, because, guys, it was so bad during the Great Recession, you couldn't get a job anywhere. Out of desperation, I got a security guard license, and this bastard was paying me $7 something an hour and robbing me. The guy, I literally was working for nothing. I was working for nothing. I had so little money, I could not afford food, which my father actually found quite funny. My father's a prick. But yeah, I had so little money, I could not afford food. This is the experience of millennials. They sold us a dream. I'm really Gen X, but I went, because I'm like, at the very end, 83, I experienced a lot of the things that some of the older millennials went through, and they sold us a dream. They sold us a dream, and then they screwed us. They screwed us. They screwed us hard, and didn't even use KY. They didn't even use lotion. They just went in raw. And it's crazy because when I was growing up, I was just grateful. I was grateful back in like 2000, 2001. I had a pretty decent job working for the city, and I was grateful just making $12 an hour, because like $12 an hour, back then, $12 an hour back then, with that kind of money, I was working part-time. I was after, I could buy whatever I wanted. I could pick up my video games. I could buy whatever food I wanted to eat. I was grateful for that money. It was such a luxury. And I was, you as a young person, you I'm 18, I'm 19, I'm 20 years old. I don't expect to make $100,000 a year. You know, 12 bucks is, 12 bucks is incredible. And keep in mind, I had specialized skills. I was working in tech. So I was like, working for a company that I was working for an agency, a public agency that had hundreds of employees. And I was doing things like installing network adapters, repairing machines, pretty advanced. I mean, I was doing the kind of work that they would be paying someone $40 to $50 an hour to do now. And I was getting 12 bucks an hour, and I was grateful for it. I was grateful for it. And the guys that were full time, they were getting like $15 to $16 an hour. All right, making $36,000 a year. And again, we were all grateful for it. We were all grateful for it. And and now you have these Gen Z people who can't work a full. I mean, you have women we have women who, even Gen Z women who went to college, got degrees. They have a degree in some very decent things. Like, you have some girls who went to college and got degrees in things like chemical engineering, worked as chemical engineers, and then dropped out and started an OF. They went and launched their OnlyFans, and they're proud of it. They are so proud of it. Like, they have no shame whatsoever. There's a woman right now. She was a doctor. They jailed her. I forget what country she was in, and she was either one of the younger millennials or the older Gen Zers. And she decided that medicine was too. She decided that she wanted to do OF because OF was more lucrative than being a doctor, and they put her in jail. They put her in jail. Gen Z, Gen Z. I remember one of the reasons why, because some of y'all think that I have this thing against Gen Z, and I do. I absolutely do. I remember watching a video on YouTube of Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and regardless of what you think of the Rock, because he's not a perfect person, a lot of these people in Hollywood are absolutely evil, but you have to admit that there's a lot of that people work hard. There's a lot of suffering that's happened. You know, he told a story, for example, where he was working in the WWE or whatever, and he only had something like, I don't know, remember if it was $5 or $10 in his pocket. And this is back when he was The Rock, and he was appearing on television, and he was doing matches, and he only had like $5 or $10 in his pocket. And I believe he was married at that point. And he couldn't provide for himself. He couldn't provide for his wife. And he was basically getting ready to just hang it up and give up on wrestling. And one of the older wrestlers basically said something to him like, he told one of the guys to go over to the cash register and take $200 out of the cash register and give it to him. All right? He said, go and take $200 out and give it to him. And when he did that, it was like that $200 felt like everything to him. It felt like everything. $200, because now he could buy food. And now he could buy food. He could at least survive a little bit. $200. All right? This man was in tears. In tears. And let me tell you something. I've told you guys about this before, about these big guys. I've told you about these big guys. You don't have to, when you're dealing with these big guys, you don't have to fight them. Let me tell y'all something. These big guys, they have to eat regularly. They have to consume a certain amount of calories. They have to consume a certain amount of calories over a certain period of time. They have to keep on drinking those protein shakes or eating a certain number of calories, or they'll start, or their blood pressure will start to fall, their blood sugar will start to fall. You don't have to fight. You don't have to fight them. All right, hunger will beat them. Just wait for it. You'll see these big guys like The Rock, big guys like John Cena. They'll sit. They don't get enough calories. They'll sit down. They'll start crying. They'll start crying. They'll start crying on you. When hunger hits them, they will start crying because their bodies need a certain amount of calories. You don't have to fight these guys. Just wait for them to get hungry. All right? This whole thing, you won't like him. You won't like me when I'm hungry. They're not going to fight you. They're going to sit down and cry. They're going to sit down and start to cry when hunger sets in. You want to beat a big guy? Just wait till he gets hungry. Just wait till he gets hungry. You'll feel sorry for him. You'll feel sorry for him when you see this big, strong man sitting on the ground, crying his eyes out because he's hungry and he doesn't know how he's going to eat. And he doesn't have the energy. He doesn't have the. Even if he ever thought about looting, he wouldn't have the energy to pull that off because he could barely take a few steps. All right, I'm telling y'all how it is. You have, guys, look at this guy, Peter Dinklage. This guy is a short guy. His parents told him that they would not tolerate him feeling sorry for himself, and they weren't going to give him handouts. And he had to go to Hollywood and figure out how to provide for himself, how to make money, and how to survive. He's one of the top actors in Hollywood. And he could not even he could have an easy ride in life. Okay? And Gen Z is out here doing this kind of crap. And so many young Gen Z women today, they have this notion in their head that, like, there's always OF. There's always OnlyFans. And they have no self-respect. They have zero self-respect. It's so bad right now. We're beginning to see a pattern. We're beginning to absolutely see a pattern when it comes to Gen Z women, where, right now you have literally men, you have older men and women. You have both men and women. And you'll see videos like this. You have men and women telling young men, do not be like Gen Z women. Do not be like the girls. Don't copy the girls. Don't go out there and try to sleep around with many different people. Don't try to do these things. Have self-respect. Have decency. Don't be like them. This is how bad it is with Gen Z women today. That they are viewed by their behavior as a generation. Because they're individual, they're decent individual people. But as a generation, they're viewed as degenerates. And you literally have young men being lectured not to be like the girls. Do not copy them. Don't be entitled like them. Do not sleep around like them. There was a time when women would be ashamed to do these things, and now they call it, oh, she's going through her whole phase. And these girls will literally keep track of every guy they hook up with, and they think it's cute. All right? They think it's absolutely cute. By the way, guys, I'm going to go and take a 5-minute break. I'm going to run away for 5 minutes. So you guys can go if you want to go take a pee or a poop or grab a bite to eat, you guys are going to have a 5-minute break, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'm back. I'm back. I mean, guys, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how Gen Z is, how they think and how they operate. You know, you can see now why I'm such a not a fan of theirs. There's such a lazy group of there's such a lazy group of people, such a lazy group of people. You know, and the and then the funny thing is, the crazy thing about them is, they have the nerve, they have the absolute nerve to get political. It's like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You know, when you guys, like I said, back when I was growing up, back when I was coming of age in, like, early 2000s, we were grateful. We were grateful to make, $12 an hour. That was a lot of money for someone my age, 20 years old. I could buy whatever food I wanted. You know, I could pay my cell phone bill. I could buy whatever I wanted to eat. I could pay my cell phone bill. I could buy my video games. I was grateful for it. I was grateful. I could put a little money aside. You know, I mean, like, I'm 18, 19, 20. What am I doing? I'm still, it's like I have no business expecting to make a livable income if I'm not trained in something, if I don't have specific training. Back in those days, you had auto mechanics that were making $15 an hour, and they were grateful for that $15 an hour. And we damn well know that Gen Z can't do mechanics. The vast majority of the mechanics, they can't read or write. You think they're going to be able to follow a manual? And back in those days, people would look at a mechanic like, these guys, they didn't make a ton of money. A lot of mechanics didn't make a ton of money. And people would look at them like, oh, it's really nothing special. They'd look at it like it's nothing special. But nowadays, when you look at Gen Z, they just want large amounts of money for existing. And they're basically like, if we don't get it, we're going to torment everyone. We're gonna be nasty. We're gonna vote this. And I mean, like, can you imagine? Like, in California, these people will be making very soon, potentially, almost $23 an hour, with inflationary raises of 3.5% every year. 3.5% raises every single year. That's a minimum. Working at McDonald's, these people have no empathy for anyone. Like, imagine going to McDonald's and the person behind the counter, and you're an educator. Like, for example, you realize there are teachers. Like, there's a lot of teachers who have, they have their masters, and they're not making the kind of money that Gen Z is making. And that Gen Z is demanding, doing mediocre jobs. I mean, I literally made a, I made a, what do you call it? What do you call the damn thing? I made a poll where I said that, Gen Z couldn't panhandle to save their lives. I made a poll where I said Gen Z couldn't panhandle to save their lives. And you know what? I'm sticking by it. I mean, look at my screen. This is the poll. Gen Z couldn't panhandle to save their lives. 65% of people agreed out of 3.2 thousand votes. Only 6% disagreed. 7% don't know. 20%, 21% don't care. I have to put don't care in there, because if I don't, then the don't care people will basically start typing I don't care in the comments, and they'll basically clog up the comments. So basically by giving them the option of saying I don't care, they'll just basically put I don't care and then go away. I mean, like I said, if I didn't put that as an option there, they would this is how these guys operate. They'll make it very clear they don't care in the comments, and they'll clog up the comments. So by giving them their freaking option, they'll leave because they want their voices to be heard. All right, they'll check it and then they'll go away. This this is the pin comment. Oh, they can panhandle with the best of them. It's just that it goes by a new name. Go fund me. Here's another comment from Tyler. I used to joke as a kid by acting like I'm panhandling, but as an adult, I wouldn't be able to do it. I feel like I would. I feel like I would, whatever amount of pride I have left, I wouldn't be able to keep living. Colonel Johnson says, living on the street is not easy, even for a bum. The self-preservation part of a person wakes up real fast when you eat pizza crust out of a dumpster. My response to them was, clearly you still don't know Gen Z. Hunger wouldn't wake up humility. Let me just make sure you guys are hearing me all right. Yeah, it looks like you are. Let me check the comments. The Jesus nurse said, Gen Z would have to Google what panhandling is. Bro, there's actually people on the poll saying that they're asking what is panhandling. There's someone literally said, I don't know what I'm Gen Z. I don't know what panhandling is, but I agree with you. Like they don't even know what panhandling is, but they're already agreeing that that they couldn't do it. This like they're so defeated. And I said to him, clearly you don't know Gen Z. Hunger wouldn't wake up humility in them. It would wake up criminality in them. Tyler responded, once I think about it, why is it that I don't see many people fishing anymore? Do people just not like it anymore? They're lazy. This guy, Scott says, man, I hate being considered Gen Z. I'm 23 and I've beaten addiction and homelessness. I don't want to be considered one of them. I already said this. I said this previously, that the members of Gen Z that actually are working hard, they're not going to carry the rest of Gen Z. They're going to separate themselves from Gen Z. They're going to say, yeah, don't call me. Don't include me with them. We're a separate group of people. This one here, Driftman says, like, you're supposed to just give me money, to quote Gen Z. Chad says, they will have a hard time remembering to get the money first on their street day. Oh, shoot. They will have a hard time remembering to get the money first on their street days. I still think they'll starve to death in a kitchen full of TV dinners and microwaves. Oh, my goodness. SDS says, I don't know how. It says they don't know how to be humble and ask for help. They're entitled and think they deserve everything for free. Bob says their entire life so far is one long panhandle. VR says there has been a trend of recent high school grads writing their Cash App or Venmo account on rear windshields. This might be e-begging. Terry says, I'm going to agree. While I'm early Gen Z, I don't know what panhandling is, though I'd be happy to learn if anyone would like to explain. Guys, do you see how this is a Gen Zer? He says, I'm early Gen Z. I don't know what panhandling is, but he said that I'm going to agree. Even though he doesn't know what it is, he's already given up on the idea that he would succeed at it. Doesn't know what panhandling is, but immediately he said, I'm gonna agree. While I'm early Gen Z, I don't know what panhandling is. He immediately agreed that Gen Z couldn't succeed at panhandling without even knowing what panhandling is, because he knows that his generation basically gives up on everything before they even try. So he just assumed that they would fail right off the bat. This is how bad Gen Z can't read, write, or do math. So It's pretty understandable. And guys, all he had to guys, the guy has a cell phone. Chelsea guys, Gen Z has access to open to Chat GPT. They have access to AI, and they're still failing in school. He doesn't know what panhandling is, and all he has to do is Google it. But that's too much work for Gen Z. Gen Z is too guys. They're constantly asking questions like, "What's this? What's that? What's that?" I'm like, bro, just highlight the word. Highlight the word and Google it. Just search for it on Google. It'll immediately tell you what it is. All right? Search for panhandling. It'll tell you at the top of the page. Just search for the word. They're too lazy to use Google. Oh God, oh God, oh God. And of course, someone came into the chat and told them, "Ever see a homeless person with anything anything outside? That's panhandling." And then of course Terry responded, "Ah, I've seen that, but never knew that there was an actual word for it. Usually see them on my way to Walmart. Unfortunately, there are a handful of them, and they're just fake and trying to get free money." Oh boy, thank you, typical Gen Zer. Yin says they would have to leave their home for a few hours to panhandle, so that ain't happening. Cage says Gen Z can't make pancake. Michelle says my teenage kids are pretty skilled at panhandling from me. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Mr. Mercy said they don't mind begging for something they want or need. They can't take orders or complete a task when asked. They are equipped with 2 left feet and all thumbs. User says their anxiety would get in the way. But guys, I'll tell you, I'm not tired, but my throat is starting to burn. My throat is starting to burn. It looks like that 10-hour stream is catching up to me because I'm not tired. I could shoot, I could probably talk for another couple of hours maybe. But my throat is beginning to burn. Like, wow. It was happening because I went to the bathroom just take a pee a little while ago while I was on break during that 5-minute break, and I noticed that my throat was getting kind of like starting to burn, and now I'm really beginning to feel it. And yeah, it's that 10-hour and 10.5-hour stream. Like, it wasn't bothering me after the stream. It wasn't terrible. It was like a little bother. It was bothering me just like a tiny amount, nothing serious, and it mostly just calmed down afterwards. But it's like I'm shocked. I'm basically shocked. Like, I'm like, it's starting to really burn right now. Might have to take something for it to soothe it. Maybe I have to gargle. Like, that 10.5-hour stream is it's definitely catching up on me. I can't believe it's burning so much. Let's read another comment. Let me see here. Remember the comment I made about them not being able to read clocks? PFES says they also can't read a sundial, much less an old clock. They can't read, guys, anything that's not digital, they can't read. They can't read, they cannot read a freaking clock. Big hand, small hand. All right? By the time we were like 5 or 6, we were taught how to do this, guys. By the time we were like 5 or 6, we were taught how to do this. Gen Z has less functionality than a 7-year-old. Gen Z is behind 7-year-olds, 7 and 8-year-olds, because you start to learn how to do division and long division, multiplication, division, long division, right around 7 or 8, maybe first grade. Well, right around second, third grade, you start to learn how to do these things, so you know how to, arithmetic, and you know how to read time, you know how to start, how to read, you have at least basic reading comprehension skills. You know, it's crazy. You can, you learn about centimeters, feet, stuff like that. You have to be able to memorize your phone number. Your parents make, because back in those days, we didn't have phones, so we had to immediately memorize our phone. We had to memorize the house phone number, and our parents would just beat that into us, like, "What's your phone number? What's the house phone number?" And you had to memorize the house phone number. Gen Z, and guys, here's another thing. It wasn't just the house phone number. If there were other phone, like for example, if you had, like, maybe you need to know your grandparents' phone numbers, like, or if you had, and when we became older, for example, if we wanted to call our friends, like if we wanted to call our friends, we had to also memorize our friends' phone numbers, like literally at 7 or 8. If you wanted to speak to your friend on the phone, okay, growing up, you had to memorize your friends' phone numbers. So we used to have to memorize numerous numbers as kids before we were even 10 years old. Before 10, we had to be able to functionally read, write, how to add, subtract, multiply, do long division. Okay? Many of us also, we did do some computer work. I remember, like, in the 80s, we started learning how to use computers, so we had to have, some comprehension. We had to learn about things like photosynthesis and a variety of different things, like, right off the bat. We had to know world history. So by the time you were like 7 or 8, you knew who Martin Luther King was. You knew who Christopher Columbus. You knew about the Indians. You knew about the Pilgrims. Like, you knew these facts. You knew these facts by the time you were this age. And Gen Z doesn't know any of this. Doesn't know any of these things. You have to be able to name all of the continents. What are all the continents in the world? What are the major continents? What are the major countries in Europe? How many states are in the United States? How many stars are on the flag? We had to do the Pledge of Allegiance every single day. Guys, this is a shocker for Gen Z. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is something that I haven't had to do for decades upon decades. All right? But this is something that you learn that you had to do every single day. Like, for example, there would be an intercom and you would be told to stand, and you would put your hand over your chest, right? Put your hand over your heart, and you would immediately do the pledge of allegiance. Gen Z, guys, if Gen Z ever tried the kind of communist stuff they were doing now, they'd take you out. They'd take you out of the classroom, and you'd probably never be seen again. If you started talking, oh my gosh. Oh God. Oh God. Oh gosh. If you ever started talking about socialism and hating the flag back in those days, some men in suits might just show up and you'd be gone. You'd be gone. You could be expelled. You could be expelled from back in those days for disrespecting the flag. All right? It was serious stuff back then. You did not question saluting. You didn't question the Pledge of Allegiance. You didn't question those things back then. It's amazing that kids don't do this stuff anymore predominantly. But back in those days, you better know how to say the pledge. The Jesus Nerd 40 says, he said, Gen Z can't even piss and shit straight, let alone anyone else. They have mommy, and if they have a daddy, wipe their butts for them and feed them. But that is true. Jesus Nerd said Gen Z can't read. Period. If it oh shoot, Gen Z can't read. Period. If it ain't 140 character Twitter limit. Oh jeez, oh jeez, oh Jesus, Jesus. The Jesus Nerd Gen Z equal what is a book? Angry Hosea 4:16 4 6 he says as he said Hosea chapter 4 verses 6 through 8. Beepers, beepers, landline, cell phone numbers. Yeah, guys, back then, like we had beeper, like there were beepers, and mostly doctors had those. And then when we became teenagers and we got towards our teen years, then there were beepers, and you were like so lucky if you had a beeper because some it meant that your friend wanted to reach you. So you look at the beeper, you're like, oh cool, I'll go find a landline to go call someone. Zeta said Gen Z can barely tie their shoelaces. The truth is that the direction we're going in right now, when it comes to things like shoelaces, it's becoming more and more common for shoes to come without laces. It is becoming more and more common for shoes to come without laces, and it's very like it's going to become common for it's like very very likely it's going to become common where a lot of young people won't know how to tie a shoelace. Oh boy. Zeta says, yeah, our generation was different. We were raised on morals and real teachings. The Jesus Nerd, Gen Z equals what's the Pledge of Allegiance? These guys are little communists. That's the thing. They're all little communists. Entitlement, privilege, spoiled, rotten, silver spoon, fed equals Gen Z and modern women. Let me see here. Jesus Nerd says panhandling equal begging. Here's the thing, bro. Here's the thing, though, about that. All panhandling is begging, but not all begging is panhandling. So Gen Z, I never said in the poll that Gen Z doesn't know how to beg. I just said that many of them could not panhandle because panhandling takes actual work. All right, and you got to be. A lot of these guys have to be creative. They have to come up with some creative science to grab the attention of people if they want to get their money. All right. You think Gen Z is actually going to go and make a sign and find a spot to sit in, and then actually think about how to attract people to give them money? Come on, Gen Z doesn't have time for that crap. You're right. They'll go on GoFundMe and beg. GoFundMe is like this is like e-begging. E-begging and panhandling are not the same. E-begging and panhandling are not the same. All right. If you can sit on your cell phone, if you can type up, if you can have Chat GPT write up a begging speech for you, and then paste it onto GoFundMe, all right, and wait for money to come to you. And they're all running scabs. That is not panhandling. You actually have to sit out there and look pathetic and put some work into it. All right. Bunch of lazy good for nothings. Jesus Nerd says Gen Z is the culture of GoFundMe, content creators, code for OnlyFans, tips, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, Apple Pay. Guys, so for me, I don't really use Venmo. I do have a Venmo, but it's amazing how Gen Z, they're not good at math, but they know how to use all of these apps: Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, Apple Pay, and as soon as a new one comes out, they're immediately on there so that they can, get, so they can beg for money. All right, so they can beg for money. The Jesus Nerd. Most cities have bad panhandling, and panhandling is associated with the stigma of lazy paraphernalia addicts homeless people and scaring people out of money. Keep going. Let's see here. Jesus Nerd said that angry. I like how you comment on generations in America. Gen Z equal brain dead zombies. John 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 said they can always sell. John said they can always sell ass. They can always sell ass. Oh, oh gosh, oh gosh. Oh, angry Isaiah 5:20. Oh my goodness. Jesus Nerd pointed out professional panhandlers make $100,000 a year on average. Angry. They have it's hard work if you know what you're doing, but you got to put in the work. All right, this is actual work. You have to actually think about this, learn the spots, learn how. You have to know how to communicate. Gen Z can't even make eye contact. They can't speak to anyone. They could never do. They could never do it. Uh, Jesus said the government turned all men into women to overtake them. That's the goal of communism. Zeta says, "Hey, angry. Remember when in school we had to solve problems using critical thinking? Gen Z has apps and assistant tools to help them. We actually could solve problems like counting on your fingers. Guys, there was no shame in counting on your fingers. There was no shame in counting on your fingers. If you couldn't figure it out, count on your fingers. Can you imagine how sad this is? Like, like some of us felt bad, like, oh well, I'm gonna count on my fingers, all right? Because if we couldn't do the mental math. Today, Gen Z goes to an app and they think that the world is going to accommodate them. Guys, have you ever seen the movie Wall-E, where basically the world becomes completely covered in trash and they abandon the planet, and then they become super fat living on these ships that provide for them, and they basically lose all the skills to do everything and anything. They don't know how to do jack. And then when they finally do return to Earth, like they basically have to spend years and years trying to catch back up. And by the end of the movie, they're able to get back to the 8-bit era. Like, I don't remember if it was the 8-bit era. No. My correction. I thought not the 8-bit era. No. They were able to get back to like was it the Atari era? Like Pong. They were able to get back to like the Pong era. I don't even think like it was like Pac-Man, like literally Pong, Asteroid. Like they could finally start making games, like, making very basic games, that were based around Asteroid. They had all this advanced technology, but none of them knew how to use it. So it was basically alien tech to them. And the best they could do, which was still pretty impressive, considering the fact that they had lost these people had become fat and lazy. And also AI. This is another interesting thing about Wall-E. They were basically being ruled over by AI, and AI was deliberately keeping them on the ships, all right, so that they would never leave and providing them everything they needed. So they were basically like animals. Celtic says, GoFundMe, Venmo is just flying a sign in the street, but online instead with a perceived sense of dignity. Zeta says the Gen Z girl already selling ass. Celtic says OnlyFans is what young 304s do instead of working at McDonald's or babysitting. Santa said, facts, angry. Wally is where we're headed. Guys, this is what's going to end up happening. These people are not, they are not so bright. People are like, oh, Gen Z is the future. They're going to have to take over at some time. But they're not functional enough and capable enough. And they don't want to do anything and learn the basic skills. And they think that the world is just going to basically adapt to them. Guys, Gen Z is going to end up being ruled over by AI. I want y'all to think about it, guys, because they think that the world will just change and adapt to them, and they don't have to develop any of the necessary skill sets to be functional in society, including critical thinking. All right? They don't want to get driver's licenses because they'll just take an Uber. So guess what, guys? Because self-driving cars Google's been working on self-driving cars, self-driving taxis for years, like a decade now or more. And the truth of the matter is that there are actually cars now that have reached full self-driving. They're very close to obtaining pretty much full autonomy, where basically these things can drive themselves entirely. And while they might not be the best option initially to drive on, let's say, the highway, like drive on a long highway, in a city environment, they'll probably be just fine. And as soon as these things become an option, you're going to basically see most Gen Zers just using these. Instead of learning to drive, they're just going to use robo-taxis. You're going to hop in a robo-taxi and have a robo-taxi drive them everywhere. These autonomous taxis. And all of that's going to be controlled using AI. So forget about even learning how to use a GPS. They're going to forget even how to do that. All right? They can't use maps. And eventually they'll say, fuck it. Don't need GPS anymore. They'll just drive. This thing will just drive itself. No driver's license, no need for any of that. This is where they're headed. These are not functional human beings, so they're gonna end up being ruled over by AI. They're gonna be ruled over by AI, and it's kind of inevitable because the other generations won't really have much of a choice, because this is not a group of people who can use critical thinking or will actually do real work. So if you don't provide AI to them, they'll basically starve to death. So gradually, you'll have to begin automating out certain tasks, including things like truck driving and so forth, because Gen Z won't do these jobs. And as people finally get to a point where I can't drive a truck anymore, and there's not enough people to drive trucks, you're gonna have to eventually they're gonna end up automating it. All right. You're gonna get to the point where you'll go into a Walmart, you'll go into most stores, and the stores themselves will be automated, because the store the shelves will pack them. The shelves will be automated. The food will be automatically stacked onto the shelves, no longer by people. You'll have machines that do this. This is really what's going to end up happening, where everything is just going to be automatically done, because it's going to be affordable. It'll be more affordable to have a machine stack these things, and you'll have stores that don't even have a person inside of them. There'll be, like, you go into a store, there won't be any employees. There will be 0 employees inside the store. Everything will be automated. Everything will be automated. And at most, you'll have is like a person working remotely who will basically be like overlooking, like monitoring multiple stores at one time, if even that. And that's it. Jesus Nurse says, angry, grid goes down, Gen Z will die literally. Department of Homeland Security is calling for a zombie apocalypse, which will wipe out almost half the population overnight. Cause can you imagine? Like, can you imagine this? Like, they say that like most people only have something like 48 or 72 hours worth of food, and yet it feels like Gen Z will still starve to death in like 24 hours. Like what? Like, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? The average person, the average person has only like 70. This is like doesn't count Gen Z because they don't have any food. But like the average person only has like 48 to 72 hours worth of food, and somehow Gen Z, if there's like a serious issue that occurs, and people don't have like they can't go and buy food, Gen Z will somehow starve to death within like 24 hours. Like, bro, 24 hours? Like, there has to be something else happening there. And if people are like, you just love ripping on Gen Z, bro, 74% of Gen Z are unfit to serve in the US military because they're either physically unfit, mentally unfit, or for other reasons like substance abuse. 74%, 3 out of every 4 Gen Zers, roughly. All right? If that doesn't scream there's something wrong with Gen Z, I don't know what else you want. But there's so many other examples like what we've already covered. The Jesus said, we are going back to the Stone Age once China attacks us. John Calvin said once a nation turns its back on God, God sends them tyrants. Oh my gosh. Gen Z are all passenger princesses. All Gen Z wants Tesla because they self-drive. Zeta, Gen Z, I want the world to revolve around me. Millennials, before you were born, we didn't have self-entitlement. We only had baby boomers kicking our butts. Angry, transhumanism is AI, future, and will kill all humans. The Jesus nerd says Zeta is called solipsism, ultra narcissism. That's what it is. I saw the word. I was like, what the heck is that? Is that a spelling? So there's ultra narcissism. Okay, that's what it's called. The Jesus nerd says, angry. We're already here. Denver McDonald's is all automated with no human staff. First McDonald's in the USA to do this. What? I didn't know that. Let's Google that. Denver. Let me check that out. Oh, fully automated. So I didn't know we had fully automated McDonald's yet already. What the heck? Is this real? Is this absolutely real? Like, so I'm gonna let's have a look. Hold on. Okay. I'm trying to pull up some stuff for you guys. Just bear with me. All right. So evidently it does appear like CBS McDonald's unveiled an automated store. There's one in Texas. I don't know about the one in Denver, but I'm shocked. McDonald's unveiled an automated store. Some consumers aren't loving it. McDonald's new test restaurant. I have an ad blocker. I have an ad blocker on. Let me go ahead and remove it. Remove the ad blocker, refresh the page, and then I can share the page to you. I'm learning new things each and every single day. All right, let's share this. Okay. So this is actually from December 23rd, 2022. So not too long ago. McDonald's new test restaurant near Fort Worth, Texas, could be the future of McDonald's. Oh, this is intriguing. Future of McDonald's fast food operators. Instead of human workers handling you a bag at the drive-thru, an automated conveyor belt brings your order to the window. Ordering is done through kiosk or an app. No humans involved there. In a December blog post, McDonald's said that the test restaurant demonstrates its commitment to finding new ways to serve customers faster and easier than ever before. Not all customers are loving it. Well, there goes millions of jobs. One commenter on TikTok video said about the new restaurant. Okay. Said about the new restaurant. Gonna wait on this. Oh no, first we have to talk with Siri and Google, and now we have to talk to another computer, another one opinioned. I'm not giving my money to robots, another commentator wrote. Raise the minimum wage. Guys, this is bull crap. Bull crap. Other customers had more personal concerns, expressing worries about how they could get their orders fixed if it was incorrectly prepared, or how to ask for extra condiments. And if they forget an item, who are you supposed to tell? The robot? It defeats the purpose of using the drive-through if you have to go inside for it. One consumer noted. Here's the thing, guys. These are kinks that could work out. They can work out these kinks. They can absolutely work out these kinks, guys. These are not huge problems. You know, they can literally work it out in the app, because it's still cheaper, as long as they're not stupid about it and they always get greedy. They do. They always get greedy. But these are things you can work out in the app. So if someone needs extra condiments, even after they've placed the order, they can correct it at the window. Oh, extra condiments are needed, and they'll just bring extra condiments. All right, unless McDonald's is so super greedy and so foolish. Okay, these are things that could easily be corrected. The test of the automated locations comes as companies struggle to hire amid a shrinking labor pool that's pushing wages higher and giving workers more bargaining power. At the same time, automation is gaining a foothold in more industries, with experts predicting that 10 million jobs may be at risk over the next few years. Low-wage positions in the fast food and service industries most of all. McDonald's, for its part, said the technology will allow its human kitchen staff to prepare customer orders more efficiently. The technology in the restaurants not only allows us to serve our customers in new, innovative ways, it gives our restaurant team the ability to concentrate more on order speed and accuracy, which makes the experience more enjoyable for everyone. Keith Vinek, the franchisee operating the test restaurant, said basically what they're really saying is that they're gonna basically hire one person. They'll have one person preparing all the food in the back. I've seen this. I've literally seen this before. Like, I've gone on trips before, and it was like, and you go to like a rest stop, and there's a McDonald's, and there's one girl, one woman, one chick holding down the whole thing, making every order for everyone. Like, there's one girl by herself holding down the whole damn thing. All right, that's really what it's gonna come down to. That's really what's gonna come down. They're gonna have one person back there putting together every single order until they can automate that out. All right? And people are just going to have to wait until the order is done, and then it'll come out, and that's it. That's it. Let's see here. To be sure, not everyone had a negative view about the concept. Some customers expressed optimism that the automated restaurant could improve service in their experience, and a fair number of wags pointed out that the machines aren't always the answer, with reference to the burger chain's frequently broken McFlurry machines. Yeah, but the ice cream machine is currently broken, one Twitter user joked about the new automated restaurant. Here's something very intriguing about this, by the way, guys. You have to remember that a lot of people, specifically Gen Z doesn't like interacting with other human beings. So, for example, when it comes to automated taxis, like AI taxis, Gen Z is going to love being able to get into a taxi and not have to speak to an Uber driver, not have to engage with a human being. You know, when it comes to going to McDonald's and not having to engage with a human being to get your food. Gen Z is going to love this. The CEO of Carl's Jr., I did not Carl's Jr., Jack in the Box, a number of years ago, said, literally said this about Gen Z. He said that he's been to stores. He said that Gen Z is a generation that doesn't like to talk to each other. They don't like to talk to people. He said that he's been to stores, Jack in the Box stores, where they have the kiosk, and Gen Z will literally line up behind the kiosk while there's a cashier waiting that could take their order. They will literally avoid speaking to the cashier. They will form a line behind the kiosk. And this was happening years ago. They will form a line behind the kiosk to avoid having to speak to another human being. This is the evils of Gen Z. All right? So they're going to be more than happy. They're going to be more than happy to live in a fully automated world where everything's essentially done for them. And basically, this is where we're headed. We're heading to a UBI. We're heading to a universal basic income, because that's what Gen Z wants. They want to be able to stay at home and live soft lives. All right? And they don't care where the money comes from. They just want it handed to them. Just give them their damn money, or else they'll turn to violence. The Jesus Nerd says, angry economists are predicting that in 5 to 10 years, AI and robots will take over 50% of all jobs. I've been talking about this for years. Most Gen Z do drugs, smoke pot, vape, non-stop. Oh my gosh. By the way, guys, I'm just loving. I canceled Netflix months ago, and it felt so good canceling Netflix. And they just sent me like a message. They're like angry. Literally says angry. Give us another chance, guys. They sent me a crying emoji. Netflix sent me. I would show it to you. Netflix literally sent me a crying emoji. They sent me a crying emoji. Angry. Give us another chance. We've got thousands of new TV shows and movies. All right? Enjoy Netflix again. Award-winning dramas, world-class comedy, edge of your seat thrills, and so much more. Choose from plans starting at only $6.99 USD to get back to watching endless new TV shows and movies. Rejoin today. They sent me a crying emoji begging me to come back to Netflix. Like, go woke. You're like, get woke, go broke, bro. Get woke, go woke. How's it go? Go woke, go broke. Go woke, go broke. Rest in peace, Budweiser. Bud Light. The Jesus Nerd says, McDonald's don't want to pay $20 an hour to Gen Z burger flippers no more. Angry UPS hub just released robots to replace staff in the hub. Damn. Gen Z is the generation of hedonism. Oh, guys, I'm telling y'all, it's crazy. It's crazy. Guys, I used to get explore the kink community a little bit. And in the kink community, you have a lot of people who are professionals. You have people in the community who are engineers, I knew a psychologist who was in the kink community. And when I was interested in the kink community, there's one thing that's very important. You think that you're just going to go in this community and start having sex with everyone, and that doesn't happen. You literally have to get together, and you have to be screened. Yeah, they screen you. You have to be screened. You don't get to go to any of the clubs. You can't go to the clubs because they're all private, and you have to be screened. You have to be screened by someone and then invited to go to the club, to join the club. All right, and as soon as you pop up, the women begin demanding STD test. Do you have you been tested? Have you been tested? Because you're not coming in here and spreading anything. And honestly, I felt very comfortable with that community because there was so much more responsibility in that community. And most of the time, you're not even having sex. They're like playing games, and they're just like playing games. There are these things called munches, and you get together and you eat hot wings and talk, and it's very nice, and people are mostly respectful. There's some jerks there, but it's a very serious community. Like it's all based on consent, and it's very respectful. And I think to myself, like, this is what a sex club looks like. And then Gen Z is out there like hooking up, like you have these Gen Z chicks hooking up with like 3 guys in one night. Like, and that's another thing. Like, in the kink community, you better have clean hygiene. Like, there's no question. Hygiene is king. All right. Consent is king, but hygiene is unquestioned. Hygiene is unquestioned. Like, there's no question about hygiene. And it's like Gen Z has such bad hygiene. Like, their hygiene is just terrible. Terrible. And it's like you go to a sex club, and like the things that like Gen Z are doing, you're like, they make these people look like they look very, very conservative. Like, people in the kink community are just so conservative compared to Gen Z. Like, you hear kink and like BDSM, and you're like, oh my god, you're thinking hedonism, but it's nothing like that. And then you look at Gen Z and like the things that they're doing, and you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like, Gen Z is just, it's frightening. They're frightening. Oh, she's just going through her whole phase. Oh my gosh. Jesus. This says Gen X is trying to get ready for retirement. Gen X and millennials are going to have to bring ourselves to the forefront to lead. Oh, Gen X, there's no retirement. There's no retirement for Gen X. There won't be any. Listen, it's going to basically be a transition where Gen X will have to basically work remote. They'll work remotely. There's no sense. You can't. How can you retire? You can't retire from society if there's no one to run anything. Basically, Gen X will have to move into their next stage of life. A lot of Gen Xers will work remotely, but there'll have to also be those who come into the offices, because you can't leave Gen Z alone, because Gen Z refuses to do actual work if they're not monitored the entire day. Like, literally, managers have said that they have to monitor Gen Z the entire day, every second of the day, because if they don't monitor them of every second of the day, they won't do work. They take no initiative, and you have to. It's like it's beyond elementary. They lived such privileged lives. They lived such privileged lives, and then they basically blame everyone for it. Oh, well, our parents, they gave us phones, and we were social media, and the education system sucks. Guys, you're telling us that the education system was significantly better when we were growing up in the 80s? Are you fucking kidding me? Y'all have Wikipedia, YouTube, AI, all of these tools that we never had. Google. Okay? And y'all still can't learn? You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. It's not that the education system was ever great. The education system has been broken for about 100 years. The simple truth is that we learned regardless of this, because when we were growing up, it was like, if you didn't learn to read and write, if you didn't learn to read or write, I'm sorry, guys, I have to laugh. My throat is so sore. My throat is sore, guys. I've got a bit of water by me, but my throat is sore. Bear with me. If you didn't learn how to read or write, you'd be an illiterate bub. Guys, Gen Z can't read. Gen Z can't read. Back in the 80s and 90s, if you could not read, it was a disgrace. It was a disgrace. If you couldn't read, it was a disgrace. You were shamed. They'd be like, illiteracy was a disgraceful thing. And your teachers would put you down. Your teachers would shame you for it. You can't read and you can't write. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're not gonna have any future. You're gonna become a drag to society. All right? You're a good like that curse. Your teachers would tell you that you're a piece of shit if you couldn't read or write. And Gen Z is like, YOLO, you only live once. All right? And all this book learning ain't for me. Oh my goodness. All right. And by the way, guys, here's the thing about McDonald's and all this automation. You have to remember, people are like, oh, what if the machines make mistakes? Guys, Gen Z, you have to remember the people that are working in these places, they're already messing up your orders as is. They can't even get your damn order right. They can't make your order right. They can't get your order right. And they often forget your condiments too. All right? They give you your drink and they don't give you a straw. And they're like, oh, well, you should have requested it. I should have requested a straw for my drink? Don't yell at me. Don't yell at me. Because you don't have to eat here. Bro, I just waited 17 minutes in this line. All right? And you gave me a drink with no straw. How am I supposed to drink it? Have a good day. Or they didn't even say have a good day. They'll just slam the window in your face. These are the kinds of people that work there. All right? They can't even get your order right. Sometimes you'll have to go back into the store and scream at these people. And then you get into a fight with them and they want to put you on the news because, people get pissed off. People have, I'm not saying that you should do this, but people have a breaking point. People have a breaking point where if you go to a store and these people can't do the most basic of things, like they can't read the screen. They can't read the screen. It's like, guys, you order a Big Mac and somehow you end up with a double cheeseburger with mac sauce on it or a McDouble with mac sauce on it, and it doesn't make any damn, like, what the hell is this? Bro, I ordered a Big Mac. All right? You gave me a fucking McDouble with mac sauce. And these ignoramuses will literally look at you and say, same thing. No, motherfucker, it's not the same thing. And by the way, this burger costs almost $8. All right? Are you out of your fucking mind? And then want to throw hands. And they don't want to throw hands with you. Oh my gosh. Like, when did McDonald's become like a McDonald's and fast food restaurants become like a graveyard for like the worst dregs of society? Once upon a time, these were jobs for teenagers, and now these are the jobs that the worst of society are doing. The people that can't do that won't do anything else. All right. My brother actually joked. He actually joked once that He said that, once upon a these people are here demanding $15 an hour, $20 an hour, $25 an hour, and once upon a time, these people that were working there, they used to be homeless and living off food stamps. Good for nothing bastards. Oh, good for nothings. Oh my god. Oh, and by the way, guys, don't forget about our little message.
Hey everyone. I hope you're enjoying my content and finding it helpful. If you are, I have a small request. If you could take a moment to donate to me via Cash App or PayPal, it would mean the world to me. The links are in the description of this video. Your donations help me continue to create high-quality content for you and keep this channel running. In addition, I'm now offering 15-minute paid consultations where we can talk one-on-one about anything you'd like. The link to schedule a consultation is also in the description. Thank you so much for your support and for being a part of this community. I appreciate each and every one of you.
I mean, guys, Gen Z is such a terrible group of people. Just a horrible group of people. The Jesus Nerd said, angry, the nudist colony and sewer club I delivered packages to were really open and welcoming, unlike most of society. Yeah, but here's the thing about this. When you go to like nudist colonies, you have to remember that it's not about sex in these places. It's about people who have, these people, this is just it's just a lifestyle for them. And it's like you don't see this type of hedonistic behavior. I remember like a friend I used to have that was a part of the kink community, and she said that basically what we are, I get tongue tied. She said basically what we are is that we're just all basically a group of nerds. I don't know. It's just absolutely insane. These group of psychos. Mike says the Luciferian elite social engineers are hard at work executing a trap not only designed to ensnare your mind, but to cage and sell your soul in a defiled transhumanoid vessel primed for slavery. Gen Z is happy for this. You will own nothing and be happy. Gen Z is down for this. Jesus Nerd says Gen X will get Social Security. Boomers were last to get it. But oh, oh gosh. Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh. Oh, oh shoots. Oh goodness, oh goodness, oh goodness. I'm gonna go for almost 3 hours, guys. Throat's so sore. Guys, if you're enjoying these live streams, you guys asked that I do a morning live stream, do an early live stream, and here you are. I'm doing an early live stream for you guys. If you guys are enjoying the content, you want me to continue doing live streams like this, drop some cash via Cash App or Cash App, PayPal, whatever. Links are in the description of the video. If you guys are enjoying this, like support the streams, support the streams, drop a super, whatever. But support the stream. I had to laugh because it says Gen X won't get Social Security. Boomers were last gen to get. Biden exhausted the funds. Oh, oh gosh. Guys, this is going to be hell on earth. This guy sent like $200 billion to Ukraine already. Like over 200 billion. Like let me Google it. Let's see. Like how much money have we sent to Ukraine in total so far? Let's see if we figure this out. How much money has been sent to Ukraine from the United States so far?
According to Council on Foreign Relations, since the war began, the Biden administration and the U.S. Congress have directed more than $75 billion in assistance to Ukraine, which includes humanitarian, financial, and military support, according to the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, the German...
Fact check. Have taxpayers sent over $200 billion to Ukraine? So they're trying to say that it's not true, but that's incorrect. Basically, we have sent over $200 billion to Ukraine. All right. We sent over 75 billion in actual cash, but we've also sent tons of weapons. We've sent tons of weapons and supplies. All of these things have to actually be paid for again. All right, we're going to have to replenish all of these things. So we've sent over 200 billion. We've sent over 200 billion to them, and we're still sending more. And that doesn't count all the aid that the Europeans have also sent. All right. A tweet by former Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs for the U.S. Department of Treasury, Monica Crowley, posted on April 18th, viewed 32,000 times. $200 billion of your hard-earned money has been disappeared into the corrupt money pit of Ukraine. By the way, guys, I just want you to know that this is from the U.S. This is from the government. The most corrupt country ranked the most corrupt country ranked the most corrupt in Europe. The country ranked the most corrupt in Europe is actually Russia. The country ranked the second most corrupt in Europe is the Ukraine. It's Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine is so corrupt that the current president, this is how insane Ukraine is. The current president was a performer, right? And he was actually on their version of Dancing with the Stars. And then he ended up he's also an actor. So he was on a television show where the premise of the show is basically the Ukrainians are sick and tired of the corruption of Ukraine, so they elect someone who's like a teacher to become the president of Ukraine because they're sick of the corruption in Ukraine, and they've decided that they're gonna elect someone who's not a politician. This actually happened. He played this. This is the part that he played on television. And then he was elected the actual president of Ukraine because they decided that they were so tired of the politicians and the corruption that they would elect an actor and a comedian. He played the president on on TV, elected because of the corruption in the Ukraine, who wasn't a professional politician, and then he actually became the actual president of Ukraine for the exact same reasons why he was elected president on the show. It's madness. And this is the country that we've sunk this insane amount of money into. And people seem to forget that a significant amount of people in Ukraine speak Russian because the Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union until it fell back in the 90s. The Ukrainians are ethnically Russian. They're the exact same people. Zeta says, in the 80s, we didn't have computers. We had books. Let me put this on. Yeah. Gen Z loves excuses. It was the same as we were coming up in the 80s and 90s. School is school. School is school, but we didn't have these things. There was no Google. There was no Google. There was no AI. There was no there's just none of these things. No smartphones. There was no YouTube where you can go and watch a video and learn all of these things. You couldn't go on Google and find a tutorial that'll teach you these things, or purchase a course or stuff like that. These things just didn't exist. If you were lucky, your parents might get you a tutor, and in most cases, they weren't going to get you a tutor. You're going to have to settle for some teacher's aide that could barely do math themselves at an after-school program. Shitty after-school program. Because don't expect your parents to help you with your fucking homework. That's another thing. Gen Z can't do cursive. He said, I learned cursive in Jesus says, I learned cursive in public school in the 90s as a millennial. Yeah. Gen Z can't do cursive, by the way, guys. Gen Z can't sign their name to save their life, which leaves me to wonder how the hell are they even like signing contracts? But then again, just right, they basically say that just writing your name still serves as a is a valid form of is a valid signature, even if just writing your name down in print is still a valid signature because Gen Z can't do cursive anymore. I used to have world books, but yeah, they had, Jesus said, just Britannica Encyclopedia in the library. That was the Google back in the day. Yeah, guys, you had to know you had encyclopedias. Encyclopedia Britannica, that was that was probably the most popular one. And as a kid, you had to know how to grab one of these things. You'd use references, you know, you had to know how to go to the back of the book, use the index to find what pages certain information was on, how to use an index. You remember glossaries, guys? How to use a glossary? This is like foreign shit for Gen Z. This is like literal foreign shit. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about, dude? I don't know what any of this stuff is. Yeah. Yeah. We learn cursive. Gen Z can't do shit. They don't know cursive. Mike says many things we watched in the 80s was designed to capture our subconscious mind and accept the Great Reset. Oh shit. The Jesus Nerd says I own 5,000 physical books and I read 50 to 100 books a year. Gen Z can't read one book a year. Remember when Hulk Hogan said, I won't be happy until I see the Twin Tower? Oh, shit. That's bad. Mike Taylor News. Oh, gosh. Angry said, Jesus Nerd says, even Chick-fil-A messes up my order in drive-thru. Guys, I tried Chick-fil-A for the first time yesterday. I actually would like to have some more. I think I'd like to order some more today, guys. If you wanna buy me lunch, we're going on 3 hours, guys. If you want to buy me some lunch, feel free to drop me a Cash App. All right. If you guys want to buy me some lunch, if you like the work I've done, if you like the work I've done, and you think like, I agree. We appreciate what you've done. Want to drop me some, if you want to buy me lunch, that's the least you could do. I'm not entitled. But if you guys want to buy me some lunch, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if you guys want to buy me some lunch. Oh, shit. Me. You can Cash at me or PayPal. Oh my gosh, I tell you, Gen Z, they're such mean spirited people. They're such mean bastards. And then they'll have the nerve to try to cry on you too. They'll do it. They'll cry on you. All right? They'll cry on you and say that you're victimizing them. All right? And then blame everyone. And guys, as millennials, Gen Xers already know. They already know that no matter how terrible your parents is, no matter how much they fucked up your life, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're still going to suffer. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you suffer. Okay? It doesn't matter who's responsible. You're still going to have to figure out how to fix these problems yourself. All right? No matter how terrible your parents were, because there's so many people who actually had bad parents. Like, oh, Gen Z's like, my parents were so terrible. They gave me a smartphone and a tablet, and they didn't raise us properly. This is the same bullshit that you hear from the boomers. Our parents gave us everything, and that's why we turned out this way. Don't blame us for it. It's our parents' fault. Oh, wait, so your parents gave you too much, and as a result of that, your parents are to blame. That's right. Don't blame us, blame our parents. All right? And millennials know this after all the suffering. Millennials realize trying to blame the boomers is little bullshit. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time, man. All right? The people that are responsible for it, they'll never take accountability for it, and they've basically, the best you can do is just realize they're a bunch of bastards, all right, and just try to take as much accountability for your life as you possibly can, and expect nothing from them. All right, you know. That's it. That's it. Uh don't expect anything. Don't expect anything. I don't know what the hell this is. Like, don't expect your parents to be there for you. Don't expect them, guys. It's a hard lesson, but it's a lesson that older generations have learned. All right, but Gen Z thinks they're gonna get by blaming everyone for things, even though they lived really, they lived pretty good lives. Gen Z lived such good lives. They lived really easy lives where everything was handed to them, but they're still blaming everyone for everything. And they somehow think that this is going to work out, and they'll burn everything. And if they don't get what they want, they'll burn everything to the ground. And they think that they're going to get it. They think that this can go on forever. They think no one can stop them. They think that no one will stand up to them. They think no one will stand up to them, and they just don't get it. They don't get it. They don't realize that people will stand up to them. People will call them out on their bullcrap. You know? And eventually they'll get what's coming to them. All right? This is basically a generation also that kept on crying wolf. They're like, wolf, wolf. By the way, guys, I was trying to like post my Cash App link in the, if you notice in the chat, like you're like, what's Angry doing? I was trying to put my Cash App and my PayPal in the chat, but for some reason it's just like rejecting it. I don't know, like it's just like it's not formatting it properly. I don't know why it's doing that. All right, I'll just put the Cash App, pin it. There you guys go. Yeah, guys, I just pinned my Cash App if you want to buy me lunch. There you guys go. There you go. You can click on it. But yeah, guys, I mean, it's ridiculous. And nature says the lack of introspection. Let me put your comment on the screen. Yeah, the lack of introspection is visible in complaining and blaming. The difference between dream and reality is action. Let me check this right here. Mike says, oh, I already know I'm a state baby and I'm 49. So I saw Joe Biden torture millions of black people with my own two eyes. I knew it was all a scam. Mike Taylor says, Biden denies his 7th grandchild via Hunter because Hunter had sex with a black prostitute and Joe Biden. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. By the way, I saw something regarding Hunter Biden. right? Like something like I saw something regarding Hunter Biden and his drug charges. Yeah, like I could have sworn I thought it said that his drug charges were dismissed, but I don't know. Oh yeah, they actually his tax charges. Yep. Here it is. There it is. Where does it? It says it's from the Hill. I can't believe this is even real. Like, what the hell? Judge dismisses Hunter Biden's misdemeanor tax charges. The federal judge overseeing Hunter Biden's case in Delaware dismissed 2 misdemeanor tax charges against him in a filing Thursday. Wow. U.S. District Judge Marilyn Naruki dismissed the charge after David Weiss, the federal prosecutor leading the case against Biden, moved to dismiss them last week in order to bring charges in Washington, D.C. or California. Weiss was appointed as special counsel last Friday by Attorney General Merrick Garland after he asked for the role. Tell y'all. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Let me see some more of these comments. Let's go check some more comments. It's so much fun talking. It's like great when we talk about the past because we are nature. Jesus says Gen Z lives in La La Land. They absolutely do. The Jesus nerd says angry. The cocaine that was found in the White House was Hunter Biden's. It's like everyone's like, I literally saw Nikki Haley. You guys remember Nikki Haley? She literally came out and said that was Hunter's cocaine. It was Hunter's cocaine or someone close to Biden. Like, you're telling me you can't figure out who brought cocaine into the White House. The Secret Service has closed it. All right, they said that they've closed it. They're no longer investigating it. What? Y'all, they're no longer investigating who brought cocaine into the White House. And what kind of cocaine was it? Was it normal coke or was it crack cocaine? Because we literally have pictures of Hunter Biden doing crack cocaine. So, and Nikki Haley, she said it. She goes, that was Hunter's cocaine. She said that was Hunter's cocaine, and we all know it. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh my goodness. Jesus nerd says Biden owns the justice system. Yeah, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's bull crap. What these people are doing, what they've done is absolute crap. And they're still going. They're still going. Guys, I'm looking at like some of the like one of these must vanish forever. What's your choice? And there's like another comment from 12 minutes ago. Gen Z for sure. Let me put Gen Z for sure. Gen Z for sure. I tell y'all, they're so unlikable, rotten, entitled, and they know it. They don't even. I've said this before. Gen Z knows something's wrong with Gen Z, and Gen Z doesn't like each other. They're like Gen Z are like cats, but they're like They're like a little bit different because they see one another and they're like, meow! But the problem is like they hiss at one another like meow, and then they're like, and then they walk away because they can't be bothered. They can't be bothered with catting. Like they're cats, and cats are already lazy, but Gen Z is too lazy to even be proper cats. Gen Z is too lazy to even be proper cats. They can't even put up a fight against each other. They get stressed out. All right, they'll give you like a half meow, like meow, mm, meow. And you're like, is something wrong with this cat? It's like it's meowing, but it's like it's not a full meow. They're like meow, and then you come to discover is that they're doing it deliberately because they won't do a full meow because that takes too much work. So they're doing like a half meow so that you'll bring them food. They're doing a half meow because they're like, that's good enough. They can't. You're not even worth a full meow to them. All right. You're not even worth a full meow to them. All right. They're like, half a meow is good enough for you to know that it's time to feed me. Okay. Half a meow is good enough. And if you don't feed me, I'll tear your shit up. You know, I'll tear this. I'll tear the shit up. I'll claw the. I'll rip up the couch. I'll destroy that shit. I'll destroy that shit. I'll claw the television. That PlayStation 5 that you love, I'll fuck that shit up. All right? Bring me my food. Bring me my effing food right now. Bring me my food, Karen. Bring me my food. Gen Z is fucked up. Lazy, lazy, lazy. Zeta says, take away technology. Gen Z is useless. They're basically cavemen. Cavemen would work, guys. You have to remember that cavemen would actually go out and hunt and actually do things. Cavemen were some hardworking people. I wouldn't call Gen Z even cavemen. They would live like cavemen, but they would live in. I mean, the problem is that, think about this. To be a caveman, you'd actually have to be able to locate a cave, right? And to survive, you'd have to hunt animals, get the skins, process the skins to make clothing. Hopefully, you're able to make fire. Use the bones to create tools. Use the tools to build things. I mean, if you think about it, we're like, oh, cavemen, but cavemen were actually some pretty industrious people. Gen Z could not caveman. If you consider it, cavemen had to learn how to hunt. They had to learn animal behavior. They also did, there was also hunter and gathering. So they had to figure out which foods you could eat, which plants you could eat versus what you couldn't eat, because some things were poisonous. We're shitting on cavemen, but cavemen were some very industrious people. They were also nomadic, so they would go from one place to another, and they, they had to do a lot. Gen Z could not caveman. Gen Z could not caveman. They would just die. They would just die. Caveman. Gen Z could not caveman. Caveman. Gen Z could never caveman. Oh gosh. Jesus Nerd says angry, give them weed. Gen Z catnip. Oh gosh. He said angry, give them weed. Gen Z catnip. Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh. Mike says, snake bite generation, 5th generation, warfare indoctrination. Jesus Nerd says, Gen Z equal Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Black Panthers, new Black Panthers. Oh gosh. Zeta says, Gen Z age super emotional too. Gen Z are super emotional too. Oh gosh. They are the absolute worst. And they think that they're chill. They think they're chill. Guys, did you know what? I was reading this recently, and like all the different things that they wish millennials, like Gen Z wish millennials would stop doing. And one of the things that Gen Z wants millennials to stop doing, using emoticons. Emoticons are used to express emotions. Because when you're writing text, unless you use emoticons, it can be different. It can become very easy to not comprehend what a person's actually saying through text, so an emoticon can help to process that. Gen Z wants you to stop using emoticons. What? Guys, these are delusional people. These guys are crazy as hell. They're crazy. Gen Z, they're crazy. They're crazy, and they're not even that good with technology either. Okay? Being able to set up a Discord server is not a badge of honor, all right? Being able to set up a Discord server is not a badge of honor. Okay? It's like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Cavemen found, yeah. Jesus says, cavemen found fire. Gen Z can't even start a fire. This is so sad. Gen Z would not even understand the process of starting a fire. They wouldn't even know that you use sticks to start a fire. All right? Our I believe it's flint and all. They wouldn't think about these things. All right? Gen Z somehow believes, like, they believe that fire starts itself. Jesus Nerd said millennials developed and used emoticons. Gen Z wants millennials to stop using emoticons. So basically, how do you express emotion in text messages then, Gen Z? Simple. You don't. Guys, these are some terrible people. These are bad people, man. These are bad people. Bad people. Really, really bad people, man. And they don't even care. They don't even care. These are some wicked. There's some really wicked people in Gen Z. Like, as a generation, they're pretty wicked. They are pretty wicked. They're pretty wicked people. You know, they're pretty wicked. They're not kind people. They're greedy, super narcissist, not very bright. And they're super woke. They're super freaking woke. They're super woke. And they're determined to push their ideals and values upon everyone else. Like, check this out. This poll got 186 votes. I basically said, regardless of who's to blame for the way Gen Z turned out, it doesn't change the fact that most Gen Zers are a bunch of losers. 75% agreed, 7% disagreed, 7% said I don't know, and of course there was 11% I don't care. And if you don't put the I don't care there, then the I don't care people, they won't go away. They'll just go to the comments and type I don't care in there. All right? So that's the only way to get rid of them. I have a comment from Kathy. You're here. She said, they don't even care that they're losers. They expect everyone else to foot the bill for their ridiculous expectations. Chu says, as I don't know them all, I can't say. I do know a couple of Zoomers outside of Western culture, and they seem to be doing better than what we may encounter in the West. Besides, such matters can usually be blamed on the lack of parenting, using social media and tablets to babysitting those kids as they grew up. And notice what I responded to him by saying, I did say regardless. Immediately they try to blame someone else for the way Gen Z turned out, and the poll literally says regardless of who's to blame. Men said, I said it on Twitter that Gen Z should have gotten spanked more, and then I got banned from promoting violence. But seriously, that's why Gen X and early millennials have respect and few Gen Z. Spirit says, as someone who is Gen Z, I was raised by a single mother. Half my life with no experience in anything. And when I moved in with my father, he didn't encourage me to do anything. I, however, matured faster than my other Gen Z in middle school and high school, so I didn't fit in with the rest of them. I do have an opportunity that most don't because my father's 100% disability from his service in the army, so I can go to any school in my state, North Carolina, for free as long as the school supports it. Problem is, I don't know what I want to do because I haven't been exposed to anything but the military, and I definitely and I'm definitely not doing that. Gen Z won't join the military. I know trades are big right now because college is really a waste of time unless you're a doctor or lawyer. That's correct. But again, I don't know what I should do. If anyone has an experience, would give me advice, I'd appreciate it. And I respected that. I absolutely respected that. And I responded by saying, damn, I feel sad for people like you a little bit. You clearly need guidance. I suggest getting a trade for right now or working for a company like UPS, saving up your money, and during that time, discovering what you're passionate about and learning how you can make that into a career or find a way to follow that passion while also being able to provide for yourself. I said, you're in a pretty good place, believe it or not. Just stay off the streets. And the response was, of course, thanks, bro. I just have to find what I'm passionate about and that I can pursue it. And then Cameron pops in and says, passions change as you age and can also be affected by world events. I can't even count how many vastly different things I've been deeply passionate about over the course of my life. I don't know how smart you are or what your aptitude might be, but I would recommend looking where the money is, certain types of engineering, accounting/finance, and yes, trade school. Learning how to make money first and save your passions for hobbies. The problem is that you're dealing with a Gen Zer. So, I respect this young man, but you have to understand engineering, accounting, finance, trade school, these things all take effort. They all take effort. Casey said trade, get a trade plumber, electrician, diesel/heavy vehicle mechanic. Again, that takes trading, that takes effort. You're dealing with a Gen Zer. Michael says, let's see. Well, somebody was their parents, so this disaster generation has an umbrella of accountability. The parents and even the grandparents have a part in this. Guys, notice I said regardless. I responded by saying, and yet again, it doesn't change the fact that they're losers. All right, and we've seen all the good millennials blaming boomers for their misery has done for them, as it did diddly squat. Also, Gen Z were latchkey kids. Gen Z grew up in abundance and were total jerks. They chose to embrace social media and socialism. What else could Gen X have done? Take their phones away? These little jerks were already on the hub regularly before stepping foot into high school. They're also completely shameless. All right? Let's see here. Michael says, at a certain point, you need to take responsibility for yourself. In a way, it's so easy to succeed as a Gen Z. I mean, look at the competition. There's an old joke. If you come face to face with a hungry lion, you don't have to outrun the lion. You just have to outrun your friend. Well, look at the absolute state of your peers. This is not a high bar to beat. Oh, shit. You only have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps that high. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, boy. What years classify a person as being Gen Z? I might be Gen Z, but I feel like I'm doing pretty good for myself. Told him the years. He said, okay, I'm Gen Z then. I feel like I'm doing pretty good. 22 years old, nice apartment, good job, etc. Life is good, been good so far. I said, that's good, young man. Stay off the streets. That's good, young man. Stay off the streets. This is among the best advice you can give to guys. It's so fun. Can you imagine? It's so messed up. It's so messed up that this is like it's a normal thing for Gen Z. Gen Z is for the streets. It's like stay off the streets. Stay off the streets. Oh God. Oh my goodness. Foxy says they're lost. Oops, my bad. Says stupid is, stupid does. I mean, you're dealing with good for nothings. You're dealing with good for nothings. You know, these are really good for nothing people. These are really, really good for nothing people. You know, like let's check this one out. This is one of the subscribers I liked, where says the school system has dumbed itself down to match the level of the student instead of expecting students to raise themselves up to the level of the curriculum. Same thing is happening with the military. My wife went back to school for her master's. She is a fellow Gen Xer. She's getting 100s on all her assignments with very little effort. In group assignments, in group assignments, she's having to babysit these Gen Zers who don't do anything until the last minute, when they literally copy/paste word for word from a random website with no citation. She has to fix everything they do, like they're infants, but they still pass the class like that. Guys, this I want y'all to see this. I want y'all to see this. So I responded, truth. And I said, even when all Gen Z has to do is go to Wikipedia and cite the citations on Wikipedia instead of Wikipedia itself, they can't even do that. Then some idiot, then some Gen Zer popped up and said, no, we'd be plagiarizing if we did that. I'm currently in college right now. I don't what kind of BS this guy is talking about. I guess he meant to say I don't know what kind of BS this guy is talking about. So then I basically stepped in and said, "Oh, poor Gen Zer. So plagiarism is when you take credit for someone else's work or provide information such as statistics without any sources." Then I explained to him how Wikipedia worked. When you go on Wikipedia, you'll notice there are little numbers next to the points of text. These little numbers relate to the sources that the information is cited from. If you scroll to the very bottom of the page, you'll typically find the citations, which are the links to the information that are used to compile the facts presented on Wikipedia. My gosh, I cannot believe I'm explaining this to you. You need remedial. And then someone pops up afterwards, and he ran away. This is what Gen Z does. I'm shocked he didn't just delete his comment. And then Samuel chick. So I guess this is Samuel's chick. So this is a girl. She pops up and she says, "Angry, don't be too rough on Dread. Don't be too rough on him. After all, he's in college. They can't even do that. They cannot even figure out what is between their legs. Oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus. Don't be too rough on Dread. After all, he's in college. They can't even do that. They cannot even figure out what is between their legs." Oh my gosh. Yeah, they can't. If you ask Gen Z what's a woman, they get really nervous. All right? Ejacu Nathan says it's a multi-pronged approach. I'm millennial, but I remember school being boring because it was so easy. The fact that calculus was invented 300 years ago and much experienced. I mean, guys, this is ridiculous. Guys, by the way, give me just a moment. I have a call coming in. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, there was just some crappy idiots. I'm expecting a package. I'm expecting a package. I know it's like taking call. I usually try to like hide it, like when I had to take the call. Oh boy, Gen Z is so freaking lame. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's jump back over here. Yes, sir says, I always say for them to have so much information readily available at their fingertips, they are so ignorant. There's no cap, dog. If if you don't take the time to learn why it is, then you don't really know what it is. Golden said, many have put reading and research aside in exchange for instant access to technology. Younger adults can no longer recite information from their own mind without relying on their phones or computers or for all the answers. Yeah, Gen Z can't remember shit. They can't remember anything. The best they can do is remember how to find information. All right? And a lot of them don't even want to use Google anymore. They're so damn lazy. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. To be real, they have divided the house, and for the most part, they have removed the man out of the house. Yeah, but regardless of all of these things, we've got to start. You can't spend the rest of your life blaming your parents. Your parents could be the worst human beings on the face of the earth, and it won't make a difference. Like there are people who are, like their parents are in jail, and their parents did like horrible things to them, and their parents are in jail for the things that they did to them. But it doesn't change the fact that they have to go out there and find a way to survive on their own, because if they depend on the government fails them. The government is not your friend. You know. Let me see here. Too much cloud chasing on social media. Lazy entitled mentality. And fu all says that they're demons. Yeah, I don't know. They don't really have a lot of. Gen Z doesn't have a good future ahead of them. Gen Z does not have a very good future ahead of them. The Jesus says, Gen Z women send one word text. Yup. Zito says they're too woke. They're too woke. Jesus there says Gen Z are accepting and embracing 666 mark of the beach, such as Palm Payment Scanner and Whole Foods in California and New York. Gen Z will embrace CBDC, federal digital currency by daddy government. That they absolutely will. They absolutely will. Zeta says one of my cousins who's early Gen Z. He was born in 1998. He talks crap about Gen Z. He says, I think I was born in the wrong generation. He's a hard worker and he's down to make money. I have already said it that the ones that are decent people are simply they're not going to carry Gen Z. They're going to distance themselves from Gen Z. All right? They're going to distance themselves from Gen Z. All right? You bring up Gen Z to them in the future once they get older, like they're pieces of shit. Don't compare me to those pieces of shit, and that's it. All right? That's really how it's going to end up being. He says, he says his generation makes him look soft. Well, all they want to do is live soft lives. The Jesus Nerd says modern women are invading men's spaces such as Red Spill Spear and going into the blue collar trades. Women are desperate for validation and attention. Wherever that's the thing, you have so many of them coming into the manosphere. That's how. Let me see here. Jesus Nerd says, Angry, there's a video of birds and monkeys solving problems that Gen Z can't solve. That's really telling. It's scary bad. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, they don't have the aptitude. They don't have the aptitude of chimps, because chimps can learn language. They can do sign language. Gen Z can't do these things. They can't do these things. Jesus says public schools nowadays pass kids that are female and non-white. Gender and race are the prerequisites, not intellect and work ethic. My buddy back in 2004 was failed a class because he was white male. Zeta says angry. I seen a study where it said Gen Z brains have stopped developing. I'm not saying it's true, but based on what we see in society, the information may be precise. It very well may be. Jesus Nerd says Zeta, it's empirical data that is true empirically. Hosea 4:6-8, people are destroyed by a lack of knowledge. Gen Zers are brain dead because they are stupid and lazy. People, guys, you can't blame your parents forever. You can't blame society forever. They sold millennials a dream. They got them. They got them, all right? And millennials have basically just given up. They realize the boomers are pieces of crap. You can say whatever you want about them. You have to move on, all right? You have to move on. The boomers picked all the meat off the bone. They sucked the marrow dry, and now they came back for the bone. And the best you can do is just know that you're dealing with a bunch of bastards, and protect yourself as best you can, and try to work as hard as you can to do the best you can with what you have. The Gen Z, on the other hand, they're a bunch of bastards, just like the boomers were. All right, that's why they call them the Zoomers, guys. They call them the Zoomers because they're just like the boomers, a group of entitled jerks that thinks the entire world revolves around them. And then people are like, "Oh, it's Gen X's fault." Really? All of Gen X were jerks? All of Gen X that raised them and provided them and gave them everything they needed and made sure they had comfortable lives. We need to demonize Gen X for this. We need to be honest. All right, what was Gen X going to do? Take their phones away? Ban them from using Twitter and TikTok? Because they left. I mean, no TikTok for you. It's Gen Z's. It's Gen X's fault that these people embrace social media. They made a choice. They lived easy lives, and they chose this. It's Gen X's fault that they're woke? Come on. Oh my gosh. By the way, it's kind of crazy. We've been streaming for 3 hours and 43 minutes. Can you imagine that? Like, these streams are going so long. These streams are definitely going so damn long. Like, Zeta says, if anything, don't keep blaming the boomers. Work harder and show better results. It's going to be easy. It's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but yeah, like I learned a little from Gen X. That's all you can really do. Blaming the boomers is only going to set you back further. You basically just say they're pieces of shit and move on. All right? And try to do better. That's all you can really do. All right? That's all you can really do. Oh, guys, I'm telling you. These people. All right? And then it's no surprise, why so many women are falling to poverty and destitution in 2023. No shock at all. What do you guys think about this? Why are so many women falling into poverty in 2023? Poverty and destitution in 2023. What do you guys think about everything we discussed here today? I want to hear your thoughts on that. You already know what I think. You know what the chat thinks, but I want to hear what you think. Jesus Nerd says Gen Z is so caught in deep spiritual sleep, they're literally supporting the Democrat rhino establishment that tortured Black people, and they think they are anti-racist. Jesus Nerd says, angry, Gen Z has Twitter, convos, and TikTok brain attention spans. That's absolutely true. That's so true. So true. All right. Let me know what you guys think about everything we discussed here. Maybe I'll hop back on later and do another stream for you guys. We'll see how that goes. I hop back on. My throat's feeling a little bit better. It was burning so much earlier on, guys. It was literally burning, but it's all good. Zeta says, I think there's not much we can do for women or Gen Z. We have to. Yeah, no, there's nothing we can do. That's why men are walking away, and men will form new communities in other countries, and they'll basically, and those who don't leave, they're basically just going to focus on themselves and enriching their own lives. That's it. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video, share the video, and just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.